Chapter 409 Settle in Sealed Dragon Territories, Secret Territory. Shisan couldn't help but seize the meat on his face, muttering, "Miss, you're saying we'll be settling here? The spiritual energy here is richer than Water Moon's Song Bao Mountain. Settle here? What? You don't want to? No, not that. How could I not be willing?" Shisan excitedly answered, even his words shook. "Miss, how did you find this place? Are we still inside Song Mountain? Such a valuable place. Those cultivators won't come and fight with us, right?" Heshi faintly smiled and didn't mind everyone as she dropped a bomb on them. "This is Sealed Dragon Domain's most comfortable greenwood realm. Right now, I'm the master of Sealed Dragon Domain. The entire Sealed Dragon Domain is considered my territory." You say, can or can we not settle here? Sealed Dragon Territories, Secret Territory. This time, it wasn't only Shisan. Even Shijia and the others let out cries of surprise. Heavens! What was Miss saying? This was Sealed Dragon Territories, Secret Territory. It was the place all those cultivators forcibly took earlier and the place filled with countless treasures, Sealed Dragon Territory? It was the Sealed Dragon Territory that even nascent soul stage martial artists were somewhat afraid of and wouldn't enter to explore unless they had made preparations. It was that place. The place that, to them previously, wasn't completely out of reach. The Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory that they didn't even dreaming of going to join the chaos to treasure hunt. Moreover, Miss was now the owner of Sealed Domain's secret territory. In other words, every inch inside this secret territory and every magic weapon all belonged to Miss. Shisan suddenly felt a bit muddle-headed and felt that it was somewhat hard to breathe. Heavens, he really wanted to know, what other world-shattering news did his family's Miss have to give afterwards to cause him to explode? Shijia and the others' thoughts, by comparison, were much more blunt and simple. After Heshi confirmed that this secret territory, that everyone was scrambling to plunder, was theirs, everyone let out enthusiastic shouts. The little golden dragon unsteadily flew in front of the excited crowd of people, arrogantly pouring cold water on them. If it wasn't for the fact that you are Lao Da's slaves, you would have never been given such a gift by Lao Da. Ben Zun would have never consented to allowing you inside. I'm warning you, the matters regarding the secret territory cannot be spread out. If you dare to even leak one character outside, heng, I'll immediately let you become a departed spirit. Shijia and the others only considered this for a second before they understood the severity behind these words. This was Sealed Domain's secret territory. Countless nascent soul martial artists wished to plunder it. If outsiders knew that their Miss owned it now, wouldn't all the martial artists in Miluo continent look at Miss as a target to plunder and chase? At once, Shijia and the others kneeled down to Heshi. "Miss, be at ease. We swear we won't leak out anything regarding Sealed Dragon Domain to anyone else. If we go against this oath, lightning will strike us and we'll die without a corpse." Heshi waved her hand, faintly saying, "First, you guys go build a few simple residences. Afterwards, everyone come down and find a nice place to bury wet Nurse Chen." Shijia and the others repeatedly answered yes, then they quickly got busy. Previously, although they passed comfortable lives inside Nayland Manor's B courtyard and their strength made progress, they were at a loss and confused. But today, they saw Sealed Dragon Domain's heavenly paradise. All their confusion and loss disappeared. At this moment, Shisan, Shijia, and the others no longer had any doubts. Chapter 410 Cultivation Plan. As long as they followed Miss, they would definitely become strong. Moreover, they would become stronger than they didn't even dare to dream of before. There weren't any talented builders in Shijia and the others, so naturally, the buildings they made couldn't be said to be cozy. On the second day, after seeing everyone cuddled together with her and the several things pressed down on her, causing her to become numb, Heshi rose up with the intention to pick some slaves. Specifically, skilled slaves. Furthermore, the most important matter today was to prepare the training plan for the people by her side. Her bringing Xiao Li, Shijia, and the others in here wasn't to let them peacefully play inside Greenwood Realm. Rather, she wanted to train them, to let them become powerful. The realms in Sealed Dragon territory, aside from Greenwood Realm, were Water Moon Realm, Burning Heaven Realm, Ice Snow Realm, and Desolate Desert Realm. Among these, Burning Heaven Realm, Ice Snow Realm, and Desolate Desert Realm's terrain were particularly nasty. There were a good deal of magical beasts roaming around. It could be said to be the best place for martial artists to refine and train their bodies. Previously, Heshi had no means to let Shijia and the others refine their bodies. Apart from letting them train their bodies by refining pills for them, there weren't any other alternatives. But after her visit to the 100 Herb Mist, she obtained various refining body methods. Some were ones that she plundered and some were exchanged for the antidote. Among these was a method called Demonic Terminating Method. Heshi really admired it. This method didn't require one to be a cultivator, they only had to have a high amount of natural talent. But the cultivation process required the body to suffer an enormous amount of pain for a short period of time. It needed someone who was extremely tough and had a lot of willpower. And Shijia and the others were slaves. They had passed through many masters, suffered much pain and humiliation. This type of person's temperament would be tough and they would desire power. Heshi could see this through the previous mission she gave them. No matter how bitter or tired they were, nobody complained or became lazy. As long as one could endure the cultivation process, pain, suffering, and forging, one could achieve demonic gold body. In Miluo continent, this so-called demonic gold body was practically equal to the existence of an undying body. Even a hit from a nascent soul stage martial artist, using their full strength, wouldn't be strong enough to take them down. Of course, the description of the method said that Miluo continent never had anyone who obtained demonic gold body. Even if the people who obtained earthly demon gold body was exceptionally few. Earthly demon gold body was equivalent to the cultivation of the summit of gold core stage. If Shijia and the others were able to achieve this stage, they could be considered to have the utmost capability to protect themselves in Miluo continent. Heshi gave Shijia and the other 10 people 3 tasks in order to assess them. They could only leave Burning Heaven, Ice and Snow, and Desolate Desert Realm after they finished cultivating and went through the trial. And if they passed the trial and achieved Foundation Establishment stage, Shijia and the others could begin to cultivate Demonic Terminating Method. After arranging Shijia and the several other people's cultivation plan, the next person was Xiaoli. Xiaoli's innate talent was extraordinary, however, she practiced enchanted power. The spiritual beasts inside this sealed dragon domain were abundant. It was suited for martial artists to cultivate. But it wasn't suitable for the enchanted race to cultivate. Moreover, Dan and the little dragon could cultivate in her Shumi mustard subspace, slowly promoting their strength. Only Xiaoli didn't have much of a helping hand in her space. Even the 9th secluded spring water seemed to lose its effect after she drank half of it. After muttering to herself for a moment, she asked for Xiaoli's opinion. Sealed Dragon Domain doesn't have any enchanted power, it's not suited for you to cultivate. If you want to become strong, you have 2 alternatives right now. One way is to leave me and go to the magical beast forest. There's an abundant amount of enchanted energy there, it can help you advance in your cultivation. I'll give you a life-saving jade slip, if you meet some calamity. I don't want to leave, miss. Heshi didn't get to finish speaking before Xiaoli threw herself into her arms and impatiently said, I promised Gidge I would follow by Miss' side. Moreover, I would hate to part with Miss. Miss, can you not push me away? Heshi rubbed her head and helplessly replied, I didn't want to push you away. It's just that, the second option is rather dangerous. Not only that, it'll raise your murderous thoughts. You're still young, I originally didn't wish for you to. I'm not afraid of danger nor murderous thoughts. Xiaoli's face was firm, clenching her fist, she vowed, I want to become extremely strong and powerful, so I can help out Mississippi. So I can protect Miss and Gidge. Heshi nodded her head, since it's like this, then I'll send you to Desolate Desert Realm's Black Desert. But it isn't as safe as a training location as Shijia and the others, rather it's the desert with the most concentrated amount of magical beasts. Although Sealed Dragon Domain doesn't contain enchanted power, the internal core of the magical beasts contains a large quantity of enchanted power. If you refine their internal cores, You can change them into enchanted power to cultivate. But the magical beasts inside desolate desert realms Black Desert are incomparably cruel and powerful, and they have already lost all rationality long ago. All that's left is a bloodthirsty instinct. Even with your charming ability and ability to talk to all creatures, they would be unable to display affection. There will be nothing but continuous battling before you can obtain what you want. With it like this, do you still wish to go and try your hand? Without the slightest hesitation, Shaoli nodded her head. Her snowy face didn't have any trace of wavering. I want to go. As long as I can help Miss, I'm not afraid of any hardship. Not only that, Miss is so awesome, Shaoli doesn't wish to pull Miss' leg. Shaoli, Shijia, and the others were quickly sent into the desolate desert realm. The little golden dragon also began its cultivation inside her space. All that was left was Dan Dan, the little foodie. As before, he ate fine foods, slept, and he rolled about in all types of fields, acting cute and spoiled. His days couldn't have been passed more comfortably. But in Heshi's heart, Dan Dan was different. Dan Dan was her closest relative in this world. Heshi wished to pamper him, indulge him, and give him the happiest and most comfortable life. As for Heshi, she wouldn't let herself waste any second of time that could be used to let herself become stronger. After settling everyone, she quickly entered her space and began to cultivate non-stop. The methods in Heshi's hands currently weren't few, but after she began to cultivate the Maha inheritance, these methods, that she had taken from the hands of other martial artists, couldn't meet her eyes. But Heshi also discovered an odd thing. Because her body possessed the 5 elements of spiritual power, Heshi originally wanted to study all the attributes of the method, so she could balance her cultivation. After all, nowadays she used her fire and water attributes the most, much more compared to her other attributes. But after searching through the methods, she discovered to her shock, there wasn't any method correlating to the wood attribute. In addition, she remembered that in the overflowing pill cauldron scripture, it had clearly said that the wood attribute was considered the strongest attribute for a doctor, representing the origin and recovery of one's life. But she had never seen anyone using a wooden attribute to treat injuries before in these ancient books or records. Truly is strange. Don't tell her that this method was incomplete and only the wood attribute was missing. For a moment, Heshi was at a loss. But then she no longer thought about this problem and began to earnestly practice the Maha inheritance. The terror and power of this inheritance was evident in her battle with Elder Jiang. It caused Heshi to feel unlimited yearning and confidence towards it. If so, she could replicate her capabilities at the time and completely copy her opponent's unique skills. So in this way, wouldn't she be invincible? But what caused Heshi to feel gloomy was that, ever since she had ignited her dantian, she was unable to attain a clear meditative state. When she was in B courtyard, she allowed Wu Xian to display his unique skill. After trying to duplicate it, she couldn't. Heshi sat cross-legged inside the mustard subspace of the Spirit Ferment Palace Hall. She was recalling the scene of her and Elder Jiang fighting earlier. Alongside the images of their fighting slowly playing out in her mind, the spiritual power in her body began to flow along a predetermined trajectory. The spiritual power began to revolve faster and faster. Soon, a small whirlpool appeared in her dantian. When these whirlpools appeared, Heshi found that her senses became unprecedentedly keen and penetrating. Everything around her became incomparably wonderful. It was as if it had become a part of her body. There weren't any secrets. She could even sense the spiritual chi and nutrient transportation in the spiritual plants located in the medicinal field. She could detect each inhabitant in the soil of the ancient Rhyme's spiritual field. Obviously, she had not used any godly records. But when she closed her eyes, she could clearly see everything, within 10 meters, inside and outside her space. This feeling was truly too profound. Not only was her perception magnified, it seemed like she had become the master of this piece of land. If Heshi stayed in this world for a bit longer, she would come to understand that this state is called clear meditation. In Miluo continent, even if one was a high-rank nascent soul stage martial artist, it was impossible to attain. This mental state was classified as something in legends. The Maha inheritance's function was to speed up the cultivator's spiritual power revolving and forcibly reach this state. But with Heshi's current spiritual power, she was only able to stay in this state for a second before she was forced out. After a month passed, when Heshi left her space, she felt defeated. Throughout this month, without rest, she had squeezed out her spiritual power to practice the Maha inheritance. But, after a month had flown by, she was only able to touch the doorstep of the Maha inheritance. As for the clear meditation state that allowed her to replicate others' abilities, she was only able to stay in it for 3 seconds. 3 seconds, this was too short. Wanting to learn other people's abilities in 3 seconds was a fantasy. Hearing Heshi's unconscious grumbles, the little golden dragon, who was off to the side cultivating, felt the corner of his mouth twitching and his face was filled with secrecy. Lauda already earned an advantage but was still ungrateful. One had to understand that entering the Maha inheritance's doorway was the hardest step. In order for ordinary martial artists to even touch the doorstep of clear meditation, it would take them a year's time. His previous master was the creator of the Maha inheritance, but when he first replicated someone else's ability, he still failed. But his family's Lauda? On her first try, she was able to replicate 2 big skills. Currently, she was still at meridian stage and could already touch the doorstep to clear meditation. Yet she still feels it's too slow. Does she even let the other martial artists live? Chapter 413 Borderless Black Market. After exiting the mountain, Heshi first went to offer sacrifices to wet nurse Chen. Then, she checked Xiao Li, Shijia, and the others' progress in their cultivation before she left Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory and returned to B Courtyard. Currently, B Courtyard at the foot of Tsang Mountain was completely different than she had left it. She didn't know where Shi-san had bought several servants from. They cleaned B Courtyard and left it neat and tidy. Currently, people were going in and out of B Courtyard. It was full of life. It contrasted against the previously bloody and gloomy scene. "Miss, you're here." When Shi-san saw Heshi, he was pleasantly surprised and immediately greeted her. Heshi nodded her head and offered a sentence of praise. B Courtyard has been managed quite well. Shi-san was brimming with happiness. His eyes were filled with cheerfulness and complacence. "Many thanks for Miss compliment. Xiaodathun doesn't have any cultivation skills and can't protect Miss like Shi Jia and the others can. I'm very happy to be able to handle matters for Mississippi." Shi-san welcomed Heshi into B Courtyard's central room to sit down, and he quickly arranged for some servant girls to deliver refreshments. Earlier, these servant girls and menservants already saw Heshi's portrait, therefore, they knew that she was this B Courtyard's true master. Naturally, Heshi had no interest towards these bland refreshments. She just softly turned her teacup around as she listened to Shi-san report what had happened these past few days. "Miss, you don't know, last time, when you gave me the supplement spirit pill before you entered Sealed Dragon Domain, I went to get it appraised at Royal Medicine Courtyard. In the end, the result of the evaluation alarmed the manager of the Medicine Courtyard. Including crystal spiritual power, the pill's pure essence was 99%. Miss, you didn't see the look of that group of people's eyes bulging out. The group of people captured me, wishing they could immediately sign a big order with me." Heshi raised her eyebrow. "Did you sign with them? Where would I dare to Shi-san promptly responded. "Xiaoda understands the argument Miss previously said about money not being able to be revealed. If Xiaoda signs a contract with Royal Medicine Courtyard's people, it would be easy for them to track everything back to here. Therefore, Xiaoda just obtained the evaluation list before secretly running away. Afterward, I put the pill on sale in black market." Speaking up to here, Shi-san saw that Heshi's eyes were already bright, full of admiration and disbelief. Hey miss, do you know how high the price was raised for this supplement spirit pills? In the beginning, it was only 2,000 yuan crystals per pill. Moreover, there were also some people in the black market who cursed those people as fools, certain that I had tricked them with fake appraisal documents. Shi-san still remembered the reversal and disturbance in the black market over these supplement spirit pills several days before. He colorfully and vividly described everything from start to finish that happened these few days in the black market to Heshi, who was listening with interest. Originally, There were some mysterious fantasy novels that mentioned Milieu Continent's borderless black market online in her previous life. The person who established the boundless black market was an unknown, almighty person. He opened a fictitious room. All martial artists could link their soul to the black market through the provided jade slips. At the same time, martial artists could engrave products' attributes and information in images to put for sale in this boundless black market. Naturally, for boundless black market to be able to do such business deals, the most important factor was that the creator had a very powerful refining tools expert. They created a sort of mechanism. Its speed was extremely fast. It could travel 1,000 miles in a day, and its protective quality was very high. It was extremely secretive. It could transport purchased and sold items through long distances. Naturally, the pills and magic weapons sold on the black market couldn't be bought at real prices. In addition, boundless black market also had to successfully transport the items, but its secrecy was very strong. It didn't attract much attention. Chapter 414 Billionaire Shisan gave Hashi the 2,000 yuan crystals that the replenishing spirit pill was sold at. This already surpassed the price of the top-quality replenishing spirit pill. Naturally, nobody wanted to buy it in the beginning. But 3 days after the first replenishing spirit pill had been sold, suddenly the rest of the replenishing spirit pills he put up for sale had all been bought. And the black market's interaction page, which had been silent for a few years, suddenly blew up. Wow, crazy. My Didi ate 3 of those 2,000 yuan crystal replenishing spirit pills, and he directly advanced to foundation establishment stage. But I wanted to buy some, but unexpectedly, you can't buy any more. Me too. I bought that high-quality replenishing spirit pill and went to go fight in my sect. In the middle of the battle, I swallowed a replenishing spirit pill and my spiritual power instantly replenished. To my surprise, I even defeated the most powerful senior brother of the outside sect. Wow, from now on, I'm a disciple of the inner sect. In the end, which great person refined this replenishing spirit pill? So powerful of a spiritual force, such a terrifying amount of essence purity. Unexpectedly, it's only first rank, even chi refining stage martial artists can take it. All the martial artists that habitually bought medicinal pills off the black market had gone crazy over these outrageous replenishing spirit pills. How many people had used their mysterious jade slips to link back into the black market's virtual space, just to be able to immediately snatch these pills away? Naturally, Shisan also quickly discovered this grand occasion. Therefore, he raised the price of each replenishing spirit pill to 10,000 yuan crystals. But, despite the price being so terrifyingly high, each time more pills were put up for sale, they were immediately sold out. And when the pills Shisan had on hand were all sold away, everyone was wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves on the black market's interaction page. Every day, people would yell, why weren't the top-quality replenishing spirit pills being sold anymore? Hashi watched as Shisan took out rows of storage rings. The corner of her mouth twitched. These rings were completely filled with the yuan crystals they had earned from their business. Shisan mischievously laughed as he pointed towards the first row of rings. These are the money collected from the flying swords Miss had me sell, as well as the method records. Altogether, we earned 98,530,000 yuan crystals. Afterwards, he pointed towards the back row of rings. These are from the replenishing spirit pills that Miss gave me. There are also some other yuan crystals gained from selling other pills. Altogether, it's 660 yuan crystals. In other words, she had turned from a poverty-stricken peasant to a billionaire. What was most terrifying was the fact that this was only a third of it. She earned this amount with the pills she had refined out of convenience. Although the magic weapons she handed to Shisan were those that she deemed unable to reach her eyes, but the replenishing spirit pills could be sold for even more than the magic weapons. This was too outrageous. But when Hashi turned her head to ponder for a moment, she recalled the scene of that group of people who threw out countless yuan crystals to buy the furnace. Immediately after, she felt relieved. In reality, 100 million yuan crystals wasn't much, especially because she wished to help a group of people promote their cultivation levels. Hashi threw a few storage rings to Shisan, faintly saying, Go to pig market to select some slaves. When selecting, pay attention to their behavior, ability to work hard, and endure hardships. Innate skill isn't crucial. The remaining money can be used to employ some subordinates and guards for yourself. Every day, Shisan ran about outside. He was also in contact with many wealthy individuals. Safety needed to be ensured. Shisan was overjoyed. He didn't decline. After taking the ring, he kowtowed to Hushi several times. His face was full of smiles. Have there been any other matters lately? Upon hearing what she said at once, he replied, Indeed, there are 2 things Miss needs to be informed of. Senior Wu Xen wishes for me to tell Miss, Hell King Manor has received an invitation from Ouyang family. The content of the invitation wishes for His Highness Hell King to pass on this information. They wish to invite you, Miss, to attend Jin Ling's annual hunting competition. Shisan handed Hushi the jade slip. She looked over it for a moment and her heart rate began to speed up. This year's annual hunting competition had Ouyang Haoshuan's father, Ouyang Jixiong, overseeing it. Furthermore, the prize was a 4th-rank fire binding method. Nowadays, what Hushi lacked the most of were high-level attribute cultivation methods. Naturally, this reward was quite tempting to her. She nodded her head and said, Tell Wu Xen to inform Ouyang family that I will participate. What was the other matter? From his bosom, Shisan took out another paper and handed it to Hushi. A few days ago there was a magic record that flew into B courtyard. Subordinate doesn't know what this is either. When Hushi looked upon the magic record, she was startled. This was a talisman. Originally, the male who had his wife and children murdered by Feng Lianying gave her a 1,000-mile transmitting talisman to be able to inform her of the time when he found Feng Lianying, so that she could take revenge for him. After leaving, this middle-aged man had given her a few more transmitting talisman. These transmitting talisman were much better compared to Miluo continents summoning jade slips. The information it could transmit was much clearer and detailed. Therefore, at the time, Hushi had given Gu Lufeng, Nangong Yu, and Wu Yu a few. Then, why would there be a transmitting talisman that flew into B courtyard? Hushi used spiritual force to ignite the transmitting talisman and immediately heard Zhou Yenin's hoarse voice, which was filled with despair. Sorry, Shigongzi. Originally, we agreed for you to come to Xingde Hall to treat someone. 1 month later. You need not come anymore. By all means, you must not come. Must not come by all means? Hushi's eyebrows pursued. Why would Zhou Yenin request this? What happened? Zhou Yenin didn't wish for her to go look. As expected, Hushi must go take a look. Early in the morning on the 2nd day, Hushi had already left B courtyard, early on, to head towards Yanjing City. Before entering Yanjing City, she changed herself into an ordinary youngster. Before she walked onto the East Street, Hushi heard the sounds of a racket, the sounds of screaming voices. Today Ji Xing Hall opened for business again. In order to express gratitude to everyone, anyone who purchases pills from my medicine hall will also receive a free inspection from Dr. Gu. The people in the crowd let out enthusiastic cheers, surrounding Ji Xing Hall in an impenetrable crowd. Although that Dr. Gu was merely a first-rank doctor, but doctors were uncommon and arrogant. Examining people free of charge today, this was a good matter that couldn't be requested of. Hushi looked at the lively scene in front of her, then looked towards Ji Xing Hall's tightly closed doors. It gave a cold and deserted feeling. She deeply pursued her eyebrows. She lightly knocked on the door. There weren't any noises coming from inside and nobody came to answer. Then, she suddenly heard a little manservant's cordial voice. This Gongzi, do you wish to buy medicinal pills? Would it be better to come inside Ji Xing Hall to take a look? We've just received large quantities of medicinal pills. We have whatever attribute or type you have. When Hushi turned her head, she saw someone coming over and was startled. She recognized this little manservant. He once ran errands inside Xingde Hall. But now, this person ran to Xingji Hall to be a manservant. What happened during this month? What about Zhou Yenin and Gu Lufeng? Chapter 416 Xingde Hall is bankrupt. Hushi muttered to herself for a moment. Then she suddenly took a crystal stone out of her bosom and waved it in front of the little manservant. Tell me what happened in Shengda Hall and this crystal stone is yours. If what you tell me is very detailed, I'll give you an even larger reward. When the little manservant saw the crystal stone, his eyes brightened. At once, he lowered his voice and narrated what happened from start to finish. Originally, 1 month before, the matters regarding Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory hadn't been settled for long, when suddenly, rumors spread across the capital about Gu Lufeng. Some said that Shengda Hall's master, Gu Lufeng, was actually Murong family's BS, Murong Lufeng. Some people also said that, in Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, this Murong Lufeng was unfilial. Unexpectedly, he used crafty plots and machinations to murder Murong family's elder and head of the household. Because of this information, people in Yanjing City were criticizing Shengda Hall. Shengda Hall, that was originally charitable and prestigious in the people's eyes, suffered under people's boycotting. Adding on to this fact was that during this period of time, the medicinal ingredients and pills they could obtain became less and less. This also caused their business to slowly become bleaker and bleaker. The little manservant sighed. At that time, I was also Shengda Hall's manservant. The circumstances in the shop were so terrible, it spoiled shopkeeper Zhou. But one didn't expect that even worse things were yet to come. A few days prior, there was suddenly a group of people who charged into Shengda Hall, wanting to take away our master. This group of people called themselves Murong family's people. They came over to clean up the door. At first, the master also fought with this group of people. Shengda Hall was smashed into pieces, nearly drawing the guards over. But suddenly the fighting stopped. Master didn't retaliate even a little bit and was beat senseless by this group of people. Afterward, they even took Master away. A sad expression appeared on the little manservant's face. Shopkeeper and Master were both very good to us. If it was possible, we wouldn't want to leave. But Master is gone, naturally, Shengda Hall can't continue running. Actually, the massacre of Jisheng Hall, from 1 month previous, has yet to be forgotten. Didn't expect that it started again now, infecting elsewhere. I also need to support my family, so Heshi threw 2 crystal stones to the little manservant, sending him away. Then, she stood in the doorway of Shengda Hall, contemplating. Suddenly, she sensed a faint breath on the 2nd floor. This breath was very hidden. If it weren't for Heshi's meticulous searching, she wouldn't be able to find anything. Heshi's eyes concentrated and her figure suddenly flashed, jumping onto Shengda Hall's 2nd floor. The 2nd floor's sliding windows seemed to have been smashed, half open in the air. As the wind was blowing over, a creaking and crunching sound was heard. Just when Heshi jumped through the window, she felt an icy sword's chi hitting her in the face. This sword's chi wasn't very great, but it was filled with the intent of ending in mutual destruction. Furthermore, the might wasn't small, it scared Heshi a bit. Fortunately, the purple abyss vine in her hands reacted quickly. Immediately, it flew out, blocking the strike. Naturally, the purple abyss vine was very angry that Heshi was being attacked. Screaming, it wanted to go and tear the person, attacking Heshi, into pieces and suck the person clean. But Heshi's left hand merely beckoned and pulled the purple abyss vine back. Her eyes were attentively staring at the person hidden in a secret place, saying, "Zhou Yenin, come out." From the darkness, a faintly shivering body slowly walked out. His hands still held onto the flying sword, his eyes were red as he stared at Heshi. With a fighting attitude he said, "Young master has already been taken away by you guys, what are you guys coming to do? Where is young master? What did you do to him?" Chapter 417. In the end, what happened? Heshi slightly frowned. She used her hand to wipe her face and take off her disguise. Lowering her voice, "Zhou Yenin, clearly look at who I am." "Qigongzi." There was the sound of something clattering and the flying sword fell to the ground. Zhou Yenin seemed to be like a deflated ball. His 2 knees were soft, falling to the floor. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and his face had a bit of alarm on it. He repeatedly said, "Qigongzi no. Genius Dr. Shi. You quickly leave, don't come here again." Before young master left, he said to tell you to no longer speak to him. He doesn't want you to be implicated alongside him. That agreement is dropped. Shigongzi, quickly leave. On the contrary, Heshi didn't leave. Instead, she began to speak in a cold tone. You joke you let me come and I'll come? Let me leave and I'll leave? I, Shiyu, will always keep my word on the things I've agreed to. I disdain not returning kindness even more. Speak, what happened to Gu Lufeng? In a daze, Zhou Yenin looked at Heshi. The youth in front of him had handsome eyebrows and phoenix eyes. His skin was like jade. Clearly he looked like a weak youth. Clearly he was no more than foundation establishment stage. But he always emitted an imposing manner. It seemed as if, no matter how big a plight it was, he could settle it. It seemed like, no matter how challenging or dangerous something was, as long as he was there, they would be able to overcome any difficulties. Zhou Yenin thought of what happened inside Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory. When confronting the formidable Ice Lotus Fairy, he, as a gold core stage martial artist, could only give up all hope and wait to die. But he would try his best when fighting the Ice Lotus Fairy, even going as far as to injure her. If it was this youth's words, perhaps there's still a chance for young master to be saved? A rush of hope bubbled forth in Zhou Yenin's heart. He knew very well that this kind of mood was preposterous, but he couldn't help but want to continue to believe in and pray for this mere foundation establishment stage youth. After exiting the secret territory, it was very hard on our Xingda Hall. Not only was it Murong family, there's also a large power, in the back, that's also suppressing us. Inside Yanjing City, there are many people who spoke of the news of young master. Our means of replenishing stock also became an issue. The medicinal hall's business took a devastating decline. At the time, young master seemed to already have a premonition. He even said if something happened to him, I should send a letter to Shigongzi telling you not to come here at all costs. What young master didn't want to happen was to include you. Heshi frowned and replied, as far as I know, Murong family only has one high-level gold core stage martial artist. It was Murong Hai, who died in the secret territory. The remaining people, even if there was a gold core stage, they wouldn't be Gu Liufeng's opponent. If Gu Lufeng had the thought to run, how could there be someone who took him away? Zhou Yenin tearfully wiped at his face. In the beginning, young master beat the people who come into a sorry state. But afterwards, one person among them was the surrogate head of the household for Murong family, Murong Feng. He took out a jade slip to give to young master to see. After young master saw the jade slip, his complexion changed. Then, that Murong Feng also said that if young master didn't follow him back, he would announce the contents of the jade slip to everyone. This caused young master to not have the face to keep living anymore. Afterwards, young master gave up resisting and allowed those people to take him away. Heshi frowned. What was inside the jade slip? I don't know either, but it must be something that young master wouldn't want others to know, even if he died. Zhou Yenin recalled young master's appearance when he was leaving. It was full of despair. He couldn't help but feel a burst of chilliness in his heart. His voice began to shudder. Shigongzi, do you have methods to save young master? Young master has already suffered under their hands for a few days now. This group of beasts, I really don't know how they'll torture young master. If I could, I would want to rush up and fight with them, but I'm too weak. I'm a gold core stage martial artist, but I don't know any magical techniques. Shigongzi, I'm begging you. I'm begging you to save young master. Darkness is falling. There are a sea of stars. The entirety of Yanjing City was enveloped in a tranquil, hazy ambience. Heshi lowered the spiritual power in her body and changed to Qinggong. Her whole body resembled a swallow as she traversed across Yanjing City streets. Yanjing City prevented flying and fighting inside the city. If a martial artist used spiritual power to fly, the Imperial City's large-scale spiritual restriction barrier would discover them and the martial artist would also receive a severe punishment. But Heshi's Qinggong couldn't be detected by any spiritual restriction barrier. She soared high in the air while using the divine knowledge to try and figure out what the information on Murong family was on the jade slip. After looking through all the information, Heshi pursued her brows. Her face let out a confused expression. Suddenly, a small golden dragon's head poked out from her collar and softly said in her ears, "Lauda, what's up? Is it that this Murong manor is very hard to deal with? How about we call upon Wu Exen, that little fellow?" Currently, Wu Exen was still in Song Mountain. Although he wasn't inside Sealed Dragon Domain's secret territory, he was somewhere near it. The spiritual chi there was very advantageous towards cultivators. Coupled with high interest, you could see Song Mountain's entire circumstances at a glance. Therefore, as long as anyone entered Song Mountain, Wu Exen would become aware. Of course, if Heshi encountered any danger on her part, the mind brand that Wu Exen left on her would stir up. He would then immediately rush over and help her. Heshi shook her head and softly replied, "It's exactly the opposite. From these resources, this Murong manor is possibly weak. But I'm not sure why. In spite of everything, they're able to become one of the 4 biggest families in Yanjing City." One had to understand that Yanjing City's 4 biggest families, most has their own characteristics. Each has their own respective domain. For example, Nalan Manor's Nalan Jing's medical expertise level was the highest in Jinling Kingdom. He was a high-level doctor in the imperial family, and he was also a member in the Doctor Association. Most of all, the 9 unequal wrongs pill in his hands was the pill everyone in the cultivation world wanted. Currently, Ouyang family was in Ouyang Jixiong's control, passed under direct blood descendants. The talented persons in the collateral family withered. It was nearly 10 years and there weren't any high-level martial artists. But, for many generations, Ouyang family held onto 100,000 soldiers. They had Jinling Kingdom's royal family's deep trust as well as Ouyang Haoshuan's outstanding aptitude. Therefore, their position as one of the biggest families was steady. After nearly 10 years, Huangfu family finally raised a powerful person. In a short while, the clan suddenly had 5 high-level martial artists. Moreover, Huangfu's main elder seemed to be about to advance to nascent soul stage. With this sort of peak strength, it caused Huangfu family to jump to one of the 4 best families. Rather than running neck and neck with the other 3 major families, it seemed to have power that slightly surpassed the other 3. But only this Murong family caused Heshi to become extremely puzzled. Although Murong Manor also had business in medicine, there were also experts inside the clan who were able to refine pills. But their levels couldn't even match up to Nalan Jing's. And Murong family's gold core expert paled so much in comparison, it was pitiful. Only, the 2 gold core stages clan head and elder died in Sealed Dragon Domain. But even like this, it didn't budge Murong family's position as one of the most powerful families. Who was Murong family relying on? By the time Heshi arrived at Murong Manor, darkness had already fully settled. In one leap, Heshi jumped to the highest roof. Just as she was about to come down and explore, she felt her heart tremble. She forgot to breath and let Dan conceal any motion of her spiritual power before she cautiously began to explore. Murong Manor's layout was similar to a Sihiyuan in her previous life. They used tall perimeters to surround everything, and on the wall, they had drawn many restrictions. Anyone with spiritual power who entered would stir up the restriction. Inside the manor, there were patrolling guards everywhere. Every 3 steps was a whistle and every 5 was a post. This small Murong manor was guarded with an iron fist. The little golden dragon couldn't resist using the divine knowledge to say in Heshi's mind, "Not sure how much shady business this Murong manor has hidden away." Ben Zun has seen the guards in the imperial palace before. They weren't as tight to this degree. In the end, he still hasn't forgot to lick Heshi's boots. Fortunately, Lauda has amazing skills, not a cultivated body nor a cultivated spirit. When pushing through this method, you didn't even touch the barrier. That awesome ability is from your blood. Next time call on me, okay? But Heshi had no time to pay attention to the little golden dragon's chatter. Her gaze was firmly glued on a nearby courtyard and her expression was grave. All she saw was a cloaked male, on top of the eaves of that courtyard, speaking to a middle-aged man. This cloaked person's breath was barely sensible and his spiritual power didn't have any movements. But, by instinct, Heshi was tense from head to toe. A little bit of cold sweat seeped out of her palms. This cloaked person's strength wasn't simple. He was, at least, several times stronger than Elder Jiang. Although Heshi hadn't seen this middle-aged man before, she could tell by his style of clothing that he was someone from Murong Manor. Moreover, his status was definitely high. But at this moment, the middle-aged man had a respectful and fearful appearance when speaking to the cloaked man. Even his eyes were facing the floor, not daring to randomly look around. Heshi poured her internal power into her ears and began to listen in on the two people's conversation. Reporting to Superior, all the pills have been refined. Requesting you to check over them. Whilst speaking, the middle-aged man took out a storage bag and respectfully handed it over to the cloaked man. The cloaked man held the storage bag and quickly checked it over. Then he replied, pleased, "Very good. I'll definitely pay back Elder Murong for his contributions. When that time comes, there will definitely be many benefits for you. As long as Murong family properly handles affairs for us, there will be a day when the head of the 4 biggest families will be you." The cloaked man's voice was hoarse and gloomy, but it sounded vague and fuzzy. Clearly, he had altered his voice. When the middle-aged man heard this, he was overjoyed with good news. "Superior Xie, my Murong family developing into how it is today, we definitely won't forget Superior Xie's support and kindness." The cloaked man satisfyingly nodded his hand and put the storage bag away. Then he threw another storage bag to him. "This is the second half of the year's material. Properly store this away, you must deliver these goods on time." The cloaked man's words hadn't finished yet before his expression suddenly turned cold. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked in Heshi's direction. At once, the middle-aged man nervously asked, "Superior, what's wrong?" "It's nothing." The cloaked man confusedly shook his head and immediately mumbled, "Don't tell me it was my imagination? It must be my imagination. If there was someone, how can they escape from my divine knowledge's examining?" Soon after, the cloaked man and middle-aged man left together. Heshi, who was concealed on the rooftop, finally let out a loose breath. Immediately after, she unhappily swat the little golden dragon's head. 1. Sihiwan. It's a historical residence found mainly in China. The Wikipedia page has more information if you're interested. The little golden dragon knew he was wrong and his horn drooped down. "Lauda, I was wrong. I didn't expect that all-black person to be so great. I only spit out a breath. Fortunately, Lauda was quick to react and threw me into your space." Heshi coldly snorted and didn't pay attention to it. She made sure the cloaked man was far away before jumping off the roof. Now, the most important thing was to find who was controlling everything and have him lead her to where Gu Lufeng was imprisoned. In the cold and gloomy underground dungeon, a scarlet flame was burning. 3 guards wearing black clothes were currently adding more coal to the fire and placing an iron stove above it. Following the fire burning more and more, the iron stove let out zzz sounds. In this dark environment, just hearing these noises would turn your scalp numb. Murong Manor's prisoner interrogation room wasn't big, nor did it have a bloody smell. But there were shackles, whips, and poison stingers on the wall. The entire prisoner room only had one captive who seemed to be no more than 20 years old. All 4 limbs of the youth's body were firmly shackled to shelves by black chains. So much so that even his neck, wrist, and ankles had something similar twisted around them. Their entire person was rigidly stuck to the wall, unable to move even an inch. The youth's face carried a strange, white mask. His clothes were disheveled, exposing a bruised and scar-riddled body. But this youth's body was excellent. The youth had broad shoulders, narrow buttocks, and fair skin. With the added scars on his body, he didn't seem to be a sorry figure. Instead, he looked even more sensational. The guard, who was roasting a flat iron in the fire, looked at the chained-up youth several times. In the end, he couldn't help but remark, "This 6th young master is truly very unyielding. He had been tortured for several days and still hasn't uttered a word." "What 6th young master?" Another guard disdainfully replied, "He's nothing more than a scoundrel who shamelessly betrayed Murong family." "What young master? He'll soon turn into a lunatic, just like that mother of his." "I've heard this Murong Lufeng has the cultivation of a gold core summit stage. I didn't expect he would be so easily taken into our Murong family, hihi. Looking at his pitiful and miserable appearance, he doesn't look like a gold core stage at all. He may as well be a normal person. Together, the three guards laughed. They were just about to say another round of insults to the prisoner when suddenly, heavy footsteps sounded from the doorway. The prison door was quickly opened and a tall figure appeared in the doorway. All of you get out, guard the doorway. I have some words I want to say to my 6th D, alone. The youth that appeared in the doorway looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. His appearance could be said to be handsome and bright, but his eyes were slightly picked up, his nose was curved, and his eyes were flickering. His entire aura seemed to be someone who did good deeds in secret. When the three guards see the young man, their eyes all held fear in them and they simultaneously greeted him, third young master. The person who arrived was Murong Linfeng, the unsurpassed in talent and rarely seen third generation. At such a young age he was already at the summit of Meridian stage. But when compared to Gu Lufeng, his advancement speed wasn't anything to look at. Murong Linfeng looked at the three guards who were looking at each other in dismay. Immediately, his expression turned cold. The spiritual power in his hands suddenly rolled and the whip that was boiling in the iron stove suddenly appeared in his hand. Caution: somewhat adult/NSFW themes are present in this chapter, read at your own risk. He ruthlessly struck them with his whip, whipping the three guards until they were dripping with blood. What? I'm not your master? You don't need to listen to me anymore? Those three guards got whipped until they were wailing like ghosts. They didn't dare to hesitate anymore and ran out of the dungeon crying. The prison door heavily closed with a deafening sound. Gu Lufeng, who originally drooped his head, raised his head to coldly look at the male in front of him. Murong Linfeng walked forward a few steps and met his gaze. But, he excitedly laughed, 6th D, I love your pair of eyes the most. Especially when they're filled with anger, it truly enchants people. Loathing and killing intent flashed through Gu Liufeng's eyes. He turned his head to ruthlessly shake his hand and coldly said, Murong Linfeng, you still dare to come here. Are you not scared that dignified father of yours won't whip you? Murong Linfeng's face let out a proud expression before he drew closer to Gu Lufeng and whispered, with great pains, I waited until today. Today, my father has to entertain people. Where would he have the time to care about you, you little bai? Finished speaking, he extended his hand and with one move, he took Gu Liufeng's mask off. Once the mask was gone, it was replaced by a pale but beautiful appearance. Although his face had dark red scars, under the scarlet flame's illumination, his face seemed more seductive rather than ugly. Murong Linfeng obsessively reached his hand out to caress Gu Liufeng's face. His face was filled with intoxication and greed. See, this is such a perfect face. This young master has never seen such a man that was as beautiful as 6th D. 6th D, do you know? Murong Linfeng's burning gaze looked at Gu Lufeng with red eyes. His hoarse voice carried a trace of craziness. Every time I see those beautiful men and women, 6th D's face appears before my eyes. Each time I'm with them, I also call 6th D's name. Not being able to obtain 6th D over so many years is my biggest regret. Finished speaking, Murong Linfeng started to loudly laugh. His voice was filled with savageness. Today, I can finally fulfill all my desires. Ice-cold, satiny fingers pinched at his chin. It seemed like a snake's skin. Gu Lufeng felt bursts of nausea. Immediately after, bursts of cold, killing intent rose up in his heart. Murong Lufeng, release your filthy hand. If not, I'll let you regret it for a lifetime. Haha, 6th D, I didn't expect that you would still threaten me when death is so near. Murong Linfeng looked at his extremely angered appearance. But, he felt even more proud of himself and became even more infatuated. Do you have the ability to come kill me now, ah? Do you have the ability to resist right now? When this young master sees your angered and powerless appearance, I feel even happier. I can't wait to see your appearance when you're crying for forgiveness. After saying this, Murong Linfeng suddenly extended his hand and in one move, tore off Gu Liufeng's already torn clothing. Perfect, flowing lines, fair skin, and purple bruises. All of this constructed a beautiful scene, causing Murong Linfeng to become startled. He swallowed his saliva and clicked his tongue. Really is a rarity. My wanting and clamoring all these years wasn't a waste. Hee, Murong Lufeng, what sort of strength do you have? You're nothing more than a lowly seed. You should be just like that cheap mother of yours, crawling under men's crotches. This young satyr agrees to you. You should feel grateful. Pai Li Paiwan sounded as Gu Liufeng's black, iron chains began to violently shake. Gu Liufeng's 2 eyes filled with blood. The gaze he looked at Murong Linfeng with looked as if he wished to dismember his body into 10,000 pieces. Murong Linfeng got scared and staggered. He recoiled backwards a step, nearly falling over. But soon after he realized that no matter how much Gu Lufeng struggled, those black, iron chains didn't budge. On the contrary, the iron rings on his hands and ankles were tightening, already drawing blood. When Murong Linfeng saw this, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Bai, what are you struggling for? Are you wishing for this young master to come do to you? Be at ease, I'll quickly come satisfy you. Ha ha ha. Thinking that his long-awaited dreams and desires would soon be able to be satisfied, Murong Linfeng's face exposed an incomparably and greedy look. Tearing off his clothes, he threw himself towards Gu Lufeng. But before he could arrive at Gu Liufeng's side, a purple vine suddenly wrapped around his neck. That vine seemed to have its own consciousness. After wrapping itself around his neck, it tightened more and more, causing him to become incapable of breathing. Soon after, it hoisted him high up in the air. When Gu Lufeng laid his eyes upon that purple vine, disbelief appeared in his eyes. Following that, his expression lifelessly looked towards the prison doorway. At an unknown time, a tiny crack formed in the originally tightly shut doorway. A silhouette appeared in the doorway's crack and slowly appeared in front of Gu Lufeng. The scarlet flames shone upon the newly arrived person's white, jade-like face. Underneath those long eyelashes was purple, fluctuating phoenix eyes. Their bright, red lips softly began to open, exposing their pearly white teeth. In this gloomy and dark prison, the youth looked like a ray of bright light. With that sort of warmth and holiness, just by standing there, they caused people to become dazzled and stunned and feel ashamed of their own inferiority. Gu Lufeng mumbled, Shiyu. He only said this name and suddenly felt incomparable distress and dejection bubble forth in his heart. Just now, when he had been humiliated by Murong Linfeng, he felt angry and unconsciously sorrowful. But at this moment he could no longer hold back his tears. They dropped down onto the surface, turning ice cold. All along, Gu Lufeng didn't realize that he held such thoughts towards Shiyu. But at this moment he suddenly realized that towards this mysterious and formidable youth, this youth that, to an extent, was even more beautiful than woman, he felt that sort of admiration. But today, all of his admiration and kind feelings turned into desperation and shame from his own inferiority. He allowed little Schwer to see himself in such dire straits, such an unbearable scene. Would little Schwer see himself as dirty and cowardly? Would she look down on him just like the people of Murong family? Think that he would be the same as his mother, a slut that seduced men? How could Heshi's heart think of such complex matters as Gu Liufeng's heart was? With a wave of her hand, Murong Lufeng, who had been suspended in the air by the purple abyss vine, suddenly crashed down to the floor. The only sound that came was, Pa Ji, and Murong Linfeng didn't even get to groan before he lost consciousness. In the prison, Heshi found a cage, but she couldn't find the key to the black, iron chains. She just found an iron wire and shaped it into a hook, then she quietly moved it inside the keyhole of the iron chains. Several seconds later, there was a clunk sound and the lock to the iron chains loosened. Once Gu Liufeng's body was separated from the chains, his body seemed to have lost all strength as he toppled to the floor. Startled, Heshi immediately reached her hand out to bring his weak body closer, having him rest entirely on her body. In order to ensure that he felt comfortable when leaning on her, she had the purple abyss vine lend additional support. She raised her head and gazed at Gu Liufeng's complexion face with concern. Hello, are you still good? In a daze, Gu Lufeng looked up at her and gazed at her pair of glassy black and limpid eyes. They were full of concern and didn't carry a trace of disgust. He was silent for a good moment before his hoarse voice suddenly rang out, "Little Schwer, you don't think I'm disgusting?" Disgusting? Heshi's face was stupefied. She looked at him like she was looking at an idiot. Just because this brute wanted to do errant things to you, you're disgusting? Gu Lufeng, are you sure your brain isn't ill, ah? Meeting Gu Liufeng's sluggish gaze, Heshi unhappily retorted, "You were bitten by a beast, thinking that he wasn't a beast but a bast. You should kill him for revenge, rather than thinking that you were bitten because you're disgusting. And isn't it because the beast is too vicious? You say that your brain isn't ill, but why have you brought concern onto yourself?" All of a sudden, Gu Lufeng was dumbfounded. In a split second, all the grief and despair in his heart seemed like bubbles that had suddenly been popped, disappearing without a trace. The youth's jade-like face was near, her eyes were clear and resolute. The corner of her mouth hooked into a shallow smile and her whole body gave off the manner of, "Who am I angry at?" Gu Lufeng felt as if he was too weak and useless when compared to this youth. He suddenly reached his hand up to feel the wound on his face and lowly mumbled, "Shi Yai, do you know how I got this scar?" When he saw Shiyu looking at himself, he dismally laughed at himself and slowly said, "When I was 15, Murong Linfeng poisoned me and intended to violate me. Fortunately, during this time, I suddenly broke through to Meridian stage. Eventually, I escaped from his evil clutches and was even able to seriously injure him. But, after Murong family learned of these matters, not only did they not severely punish Murong Linfeng, they merely beat him once and then said that I was a man-seducing slut, that I was just as shameless as my mom. And when those clan elders saw my body and natural aptitude, they wanted to raise me in a cultivation stove. Hee, this is the Murong family of Yanjing City's 4 big families. From the outside, it's bright and beautiful. But inside, it has long since become extremely rotten, even filthier than sewer rats. Indescribable anger and hatred appeared on Gu Liufeng's face. The hands by his side tightened into fists. I was left helpless. The only thing I could do was use a special medicine to scratch my own face and even pretend that all my cultivation had wasted away, so that they would chase me out of Murong Manor. Over these past 10 years, I've done all I could to cultivate. Even if I lowered my lifespan or ignited my dantian, I didn't let it stop me. After 10 years, I reached the summit of Gold Core stage. During my most difficult times, I let my hatred for Murong family motivate me to keep going. If it weren't for the fact that my mother is still in their hands or that she was still sick, I would have already killed Murong family, this group of brutes, without sparing even the lives of the chickens and dogs, long ago. Shiyu, I hate them. I can't wait to eat their meat, drink their blood, and dismember these scums into 1,000 pieces. Heshi quietly listened as Gu Lufeng vented out his year's worth of anger and hate. She didn't try to comfort him, nor did she have a sympathetic expression on her face, because she knew that Gu Lufeng didn't need these things. When Gu Lufeng finished speaking, she indifferently said, "However you wish to handle Murong family, count me in. I'll help you." Suddenly, Gu Lufeng lifted his head up and looked at her. His voice was husky. "Shiyu, what you owe me has long since already been repaid, and now, I owe you even more. Why do you want to help me?" "I don't know." Heshi lightly laughed. Her eyes had a faint thread of brilliance. "It could be because Murong family, this group of brutes, are unpleasing to the eye. It could be because I'm bored senseless. Could also be because you were the first to say that I was your friend. Regardless of his reasons, I, Shiyu, only do what I want to do. I follow my heart's desires. What reason do I need?" The dark rays in Gu Liufeng's eyes slowly illuminated, and the concentrated gloominess and despair also gradually changed into starlight. In the blink of an eye, he felt as if all the hatred, darkness, humiliation, and pain he felt for years turn insignificant. Perhaps the despair he previously felt was just waiting for this moment, when light and hope arrived. Heshi kicked at the unconscious Murong Linfeng and asked, "How do you want to deal with him?" Gu Lufeng composed himself and pressed down his raging emotions. Then he walked over to the flat iron that had already been heated until it was red. Heshi hugged herself and stood off to the side. She expressionlessly watched Gu Liufeng's actions. The purple abyss vine wordlessly flew out and separated this prison from the outside world. Gu Lufeng slowly walked in front of Murong Linfeng. His eyes were filled with raging emotions. There was loathing, hostility, detest, and killing intent. Then he resolutely brought the flat iron down and firmly pressed down on Murong Linfeng's crotch. The sound of sizzling echoed in the prison, and then the sound of a piece of flesh being burnt was heard. Soon after, the previously unconscious Murong Linfeng came to and let out a miserable howl. His entire body was curled up like a shrimp as he shrieked, rolling about on the floor. His face was covered in sweat and tears. And when he opened his eyes, all he saw was Gu Liufeng's gorgeous face as he sneered at him. The horizontal scar across his face looked like a red blade that was waving at him, taking his life. Murong Linfeng pointed at Gu Lufeng and said, his voice trembling, "How did you escape?" He looked at the flat iron in Gu Liufeng's hand as he slowly advanced forward and was scared so much his body began to shake. "Don't come over here. What do you want to do?" "If you were to kill me, my father and my mother will never let you off. Murong family won't let you off. Murong Lufeng, I'm telling you, me looking upon you is your good fortune. You're nothing more but Murong family's bastard. By following me, you can learn Murong family's most profound method. The second time the flat iron struck, it firmly pressed down on his crotch again. Murong Linfeng couldn't bear it any longer, and with one last frail howl, he sank into unconsciousness. Now, the bottom half of him was badly mangled. The material of his trousers and his burnt skin stuck together into a ball. Upon seeing it, one would feel unspeakable nausea and fright. When he saw this sight, Gu Lufeng felt pleased. He threw the flat iron away and coldly remarked, "Murong Linfeng, I want to see how you'll perform illicit matters with that thing in your crotch in the future." Heshi raised her eyebrow. "He's such a brute. Do you intend to let him off just like this?" As she was speaking, she was also taking a piece of wide clothing and a bottle of replenishing spirit pills and threw them at Gu Lufeng. This piece of clothing had a water and fire defense attribute. She got it from trading in the 100 Herb Mist. It was considered a rarely seen magic item. But the clothing was too wide, as it was intended for men, so Heshi had forgotten it and left it in a corner to collect dust. Now it was just perfect for Gu Lufeng to wear. When Gu Lufeng thought that he had been entirely naked in front of Heshi, his face reddened. Flustered, he hurriedly took the clothing and put it on. Then he took a deep breath before answering her. "Murong family still has some information that can be used against my mother. Moreover, my mother is still in their hands. By leaving Murong Linfeng, perhaps he can become a hostage later." Heshi nodded her head. Depending on Gu Liufeng's strength, if they wanted to escape, nobody in Murong family was his opponent. Zhou Yenin had already said that if Gu Lufeng was captured, it was because Murong family had information that could be used against him. But Heshi's heart was filled with doubt as she looked at the badly mutilated Murong Linfeng. Would Murong family give Gu Lufeng to bargain with them using such a piece of waste? Thinking up to here, Heshi's heart suddenly moved and she stopped Gu Lufeng from bringing Murong Linfeng. "Wait a moment." Heshi's mouth curved into a shallow arch. "I have an even better idea." The youth's eyes glammed and filled with craftiness. It contrasted against his originally cold appearance. That sort of liveliness was extremely colorful. Gu Lufeng was startled, foolishly staring as he stood there. He watched as Heshi bent down and with tools he hadn't realized she had, began to smear something on Murong Linfeng's face and body. A moment later, Gu Lufeng looked towards Murong Linfeng's body again and his eyes widened. The person in front of him no longer looked like Murong Linfeng. Instead, he looked exactly the same as himself, Gu Lufeng. Even the badly mangled crotch injury was changed into a common stab under Heshi's skillful hands. Gu Lufeng stuttered for a while before he finally said with his voice filled with disbelief, "Shiui, how did you do it?" I used spiritual energy to check and didn't feel as if he was a fake at all. He lightly pouted and faintly laughed as she said, "You still aren't binding Gu Lufeng up? Since Gu Lufeng still hasn't escaped, you should be completely free from worry about the information that they can use against you, right?" Gu Liufeng's face filled with joy and he immediately ran over to tie Murong Linfeng with the black iron chains. After tying Murong Linfeng up, the two people set out to depart when Gu Lufeng suddenly pulled on Heshi and whispered, "People are coming." Under the healing of Heshi's medicines, Gu Liufeng's power was almost completely replenished. Now, with the strength at the summit of a gold core stage, although he didn't dare to use divine knowledge, any area within 10 meters of Gu Lufeng wouldn't be able to escape him. The two people looked at each other and quickly found a place to conceal themselves. The place the pair of them hid in was very narrow. Their bodies were practically pasted to each other. Gu Lufeng could smell the faint fragrance on Heshi's body. It smelled lightly of medicine. It filled his nose like the strongest rushing feeling drug, causing his heart to beat like a drum. His whole face was red. At this moment he genuinely discovered. Shiyu's skin was pure white, his lips were tender and bright red, and his body was petite and fine. Chapter 426 Murong Linfeng fading away. A butterfly-looking collarbone rested underneath that slender neck. The gorgeous curve opened up to his lapel. Even the most miraculous craftsman would be incapable of carving a portrayal that even half as elegant. Gu Lufeng suddenly felt as if his mouth was dry and that was nearly incapable of breathing. He couldn't suppress the urge to roughly gasp for breath. Heshi cast a glance at him and saw that his complexion was strange. She thought that the people who had come were his biggest enemies, causing him to become unable to control his mood. At once, she fished out a pill from her bosom. "This is a calming anger pill. It controls your breathing and spiritual power fluctuations, so that nobody else will find you. If not, then all our efforts have been wasted." Gu Lufeng met Heshi's clear eyes. Those eyes were muddled. Apart from concern, there was also concern. He suddenly felt as if he wanted to slap himself. Shiyu had ran over here in the face of danger and regarded him as a good friend, but he was doing nothing but thinking of filthy thoughts. Gu Lufeng took a deep breath and pressed his turbulent emotions down. Then he began to conceal his breathing and spiritual power movements until it seemed as if it wasn't there at all. And right at this moment, a woman's voice sounded by the doorway. "Outrageous! The prison is such an important place, yet you dare to neglect your duties and sleep here? Do you want to die? Didn't see anyone here? And you're still not standing up for me." Those three guards had been given knockout drugs by Heshi. Now, they woke up and were completely bewildered. When they woke up some more and saw the people who arrived, they were immediately terror-stricken. "Madam!" "Subordinate sees Madam." For a moment, it was silent. Then a dignified woman's voice sounded, "Is second young master here?" The guard hesitated and stammered, and for a long time he didn't dare say a word. The woman's voice suddenly turned cold. "If you don't want to die, then quickly speak. Did second young master come to find that slut?" Replying to Madam, "Yes. Yes, he did. 1 hour before, second young master. Second young master went in there." Their words just came out and the prison doors opened with a prung sound. Hidden in the secret place, Heshi saw the woman burst inside the prison with an angry face. Her head was covered full of green jade beads and she was gracefully and luxuriously dressed. As she was entering, she was also angrily shouting, "Murong Lufeng, you shameless slut. Today, I will definitely skin you, you seducing slut." But when she entered into the prison, she discovered that the prison was completely empty. Apart from the locked up and unconscious Gu Lufeng, there was nobody else. Madame Murong fiercely turned to glare at the guards and sternly yelled at them, "Didn't you say that second young master came in here? Where is he?" Shock was written across the guards' faces as well. They had clearly seen the second young master enter. This prison wasn't any more than 10 square meters, but it was plainly visible that Murong Linfeng wasn't here. So where was he? The servant girl that followed behind Madame Murong neared her and whispered in her ear, "Second young master probably already finished playing and left." Those guards slacked off and fell asleep. Of course, they don't know when the second young master left. Listening to the servant girl's words, Madame Mourong's gaze rested on Gu Liufeng's body. She saw that his clothes were untidy and his appearance was haggard. The mask on his face had long since been taken off, exposing his beautiful face, which made her embarrassed and envious, as well as his snow-white skin. Slut! Shameless bast! Bitterness and hatred bubbled forth in Madame Mourong's heart. Grabbing the nearby bucket of salt water, she resolutely splashed it on his wounds. The tortured Gu Lufeng let out miserable cries and incessantly moaned as he began to slowly open his eyes up. Without waiting for him to register the people who had come, the unresolved Madame Mourong had already brought the heated flat iron and ruthlessly pressed it down on his face. The sound of burning flesh that caused people's tooths to ache sounded again. Following that was the smell of barbecue. The Gu Lufeng, being tortured, couldn't speak through the pain. All he could do was let out blood-curdling screeches. Madame Mourong looked at his pitiful appearance and felt extremely cheerful in her heart. Laughing, she said, "Shameless bast, didn't you just rely on this face of yours to seduce Lin Feng? Seeing as I've ruined your face now, I'd like to see how you can entice my son again." Ha ha! The tortured Gu Lufeng had clearly also heard Madame Mourong because his face held an expression filled with shock. He looked down to look at himself and began to frantically struggle, but he discovered that he couldn't even budge. Regardless of whether it was his face or crotch, there was heart-tearing and lung-splitting pain from both. But what was the scariest fact was that his own mother stood in front of him but didn't recognize him. Instead she called him Mourong Lin Feng. Gu Lufeng opened his mouth wide and yelled out in his hoarse voice, "Mother, it's me. I am Lin Feng. I'm your son. Save me. Save me." But his face had been burned by the flat iron, even his lips were inflamed. So, all his words were intelligible. Madame Mourong didn't understand what he was saying at all. Seeing him screaming and crying with his eyes full of dread, she actually felt incomparably carefree. Taking a hairpin out of her hair, she randomly stabbed at his face. "Ha! Little bast, what are you? You're nothing more than the random goods some depraved and crazy woman gave birth to. But, unexpectedly, your aptitude is higher than my son, and you even dare to seduce my son. I spit on you. You're just the same as that mother of yours, stepped on by other people for a lifetime. By, slut, damn bast." To a martial artist, the hairpin coming down wasn't a threat to their life whatsoever. But this face was quickly mutilated by her. That fright and pain couldn't be matched by any normal torture method. All along, Mourong Lin Feng had been begging for forgiveness, until finally he drew his last breath and his voice became weaker and weaker, slowly tapering off until he wasn't heard anymore. Roughly breathing, Madame Mourong opened her eyes, and as she watched Gu Lufeng, she recalled the humiliation she suffered under this mother and son pair those few years prior and wished she could tear this little bast to shreds. But, no matter what, the people in Mourong family wanted to leave this little bast and slut alive, causing her to be unable to make peace with this resentment. All of a sudden, it seemed as if she had thought of something. Quickly walking over to a corner in the interrogation room, Madame Mourong evilly grinned and opened one of the mechanisms. Quickly, a wooden suitcase, that was approximately half a person tall, appeared. Inside the wooden suitcase, a disheveled-haired woman lay curled up in it. All they saw was that this woman was red all over, from head to toe. Her body was covered in numerous scars. Moreover, these scars were folding over each other, new and old scars overlapped each other. It was extremely evident that this woman had never stopped being tortured. But what shocked Hashi the most was that this person was 6 meters tall, but day and night, she had been locked up in this 1 meter tall suitcase, curled up and incapable of unfolding. What kind of torment was this? When she laid her eyes upon this person, Hashi felt the nearby Gu Lufeng tense up and noticed his eyes turned as red as blood. If it weren't for Hashi holding him back, he would have recklessly rushed out. Madame Mourong grabbed onto her hair and pulled her out of the suitcase, dragging her like she would trash until she was in front of Gu Lufeng. Off to the side, the guard's face was panic-stricken. Nearing her, he quietly whispered, Before, Master said that we couldn't recklessly take her out without his order. Doing this. 1. You. When the guard is saying you, he's saying neen, which is a more formal way of saying you, versus an I, which is more informal. Chapter 428 Terrifying Fact 1. Madame Murong quickly slapped him and grimly laughed. Am I the madam or are you the madam? When I'm handling matters, I still need you to come and teach me. I pulled this slut out only to let these two mother and son look at each other's miserable and humiliated states. Naturally, before Master comes back, she will be sent back. What do you have to be anxious about? Xiao Huan, bring those 3 out for me and guard them by the doorway. Don't let anyone enter. If Master comes, remember to notify me. The servant girl following by Madame Murong's side immediately answered yes, and with a cold face, she promptly rushed the 3 guards outside. Madame Murong looked at the woman who was crawling on the floor like a dog and burst into laughter. Goon, you slut, at that time you were so high up, did you ever think that you would meet this day? Did you think that your son would meet this day? Before when I tortured you, weren't you indifferent? Didn't you disdainfully glance at me? Now I'll look, I want to see if you can still remain so calm when I'm torturing your son. Finished speaking, she took a whip that had been wet with salt water and firmly struck at Guyolan's body, intending to first wake her up. But, just when her whip had reached midair, her wrist was suddenly pulled on by an iron claw. Who dares to block me? Madame Murong angrily yelled out and turned around to look behind her. But when she turned around to look at the person behind her, her face was suddenly overwhelmed with shock. She could only gasp. How did you? Gu Liufeng's face was illuminated by the coal fire, his beautiful facial features and red scars stung Madame Murong's eyes, causing them to ache. Madame Murong looked at the tortured and tied up Gu Lufeng, then looked at the person in front of her. Her voice trembled. Who are you? Who am I? Gu Liufeng's mouth lifted up into an icy smile, then he replied with mockery laced in his tone, Madam really has a short memory. Just then, you kept saying I was a slut, now you can't even recognize me? Madame Murong stumbled and fell backwards, crashing into the tied-up Gu Lufeng behind her. That person let out a pained scream, and at this moment, that voice rung in Madame Murong's ears. The voice was so familiar to her, it caused her to be scared out of her wits. You say you're Gu Lufeng? Then who is he? She slowly stepped out of the shadows and walked up to Gu Liufeng's side. The purple abyss vine in her hands flew out and held onto Murong Linfeng's face. The purple vine wiped a little and immediately, Murong Linfeng's face and body restored into its previous state. Although his face had already been destroyed by Madame Murong, the left side of his chest still held a very eye-catching birthmark. This was the birthmark that only her son, Murong Linfeng, had. Madame Murong let out a heart-tearing and lung-splitting screech as she recoiled backwards, as if the person that was tied up was a goblin. No, it's not possible. It can't be Linfeng, it can't be my son. You cheated me. It was you, this slut, who cheated me. Just then, the person she expended great efforts to torture, the person she hated with all her heart and whom she wanted to die, actually wasn't Murong Linfeng, that the *** bast, but instead her beloved son. This terrifying fact caused Madame Murong to shake all over, causing her to be on the verge of insanity. Her 2 eyes bulged out as she let out a hysterical roar. Rushing towards Gu Lufeng, she wanted to fight with him. But she was nothing more than an insignificant foundation establishment stage. How could she contend against Gu Lufeng at all? All it took was the wave of a hand and she collapsed on the floor. Her hair was in a disarray and she was battered and exhausted. Taking a whip moistened with salt water, Gu Lufeng ruthlessly whipped her body. When you tortured my mother, weren't you rampant, very proud of yourself? When you tortured this mother and son pair, didn't you act all high and mighty, regarding us as animals? Unable to completely dissolve his hatred with just the whip, Gu Lufeng took the flat iron laying nearby and firmly pressed it on her body. Then, he grabbed the bucket of salt water and poured it on her. Madame Murong let out a blood-curdling scream. She incessantly rolled about on the floor as she begged for forgiveness. I was wrong, I was wrong. I'm begging you to let me off. Gu Lufeng, you slut. You dare to act like this towards us? You don't deserve an easy death. Gu Liufeng's expression was very calm, but his eyes were filled with raging flames. At this moment, the pain and torture that this mother and son pair inflicted upon him flashed through his eyes. Every day, he was itching to peel their skin off and break their bones, to break them down into bones and scatter their ashes in the wind. Every day, he endured the fear of his mother being tortured and the hatred towards himself. He suffered in this anxious state. Finally, the heavens had eyes. Today, these two people finally fell into his hands. How should he strip them apart in order to appease the hatred he felt towards them? Suddenly, a hand gripped the hand that held the torture tool. Gu Lufeng lifted his head up and came into contact with Shiyu's delicate complexion and shining eyes. Towards him, He shook her head. Leave them, they're still useful. If you want to calculate a debt, it would be better to wait until Murong family has been destroyed. Then, you can calculate your debt with the whole group of people. During that time, wouldn't it be more straightforward? Gu Liufeng's hand loosened and the iron in his hand fell to the floor with a ping sound. He nodded his head and softly said, "Thank you, Shiyu." He now knew that it wasn't because the heavens had eyes that he was saved, it wasn't because the heavens had eyes that he could take revenge. Instead, it was because of this person in front of him. Because of a youth, as bright as the moon and as dazzling as the sun appeared in his world, who went by the name Shiyu. He took off Madame Murong's clothes and quickly transformed her appearance into Guyolan's. In order to make it appear more real, He used a whip to lash at Madame Murong's body numerous times in order to create countless scars. She also used medicine to make these scars look older. Under these several actions, Madame Murong was brought to her last breath and fainted. He smiled and pricked the back of her head with a silver needle. After the silver needle had pricked her, Madame Murong wouldn't be able to speak, use spiritual power, and would even sometimes become erratic. As for the locked-up Murong Linfeng, his tongue had been badly burned and he couldn't freely speak as he wished. Adding on to that fact was that he couldn't use his spiritual power, the black iron chains kept him from doing so. His cultivation level was indistinguishable, causing nobody to realize that he had been switched out. He stored the unconscious Madame Murong into the wooden suitcase and faintly laughed. Compared with the scars on her body, letting her experience the taste of being locked inside the suitcase is even more terrifying and torturous to a person's heart. Most likely, before she's even discovered, she would have already been driven mad. Gu Lufeng carried his unconscious mother. His eyes were filled with endless amounts of distress. His mother had suffered this torture non-stop. Fortunately, all the nightmares have passed. The two people knocked the 3 guards outside unconscious and left Murong Manor's prison. Once they entered Murong Manor's inner courtyard, He saw that Gu Liufeng's pair of eyes rigidly stared towards the direction of the master's room. His eyes were filled full of hatred, as if he would rush in and fight in the next moment. Chapter 430 Bound. He grabbed onto him and lowly said, "Tonight, you can't fight. This Murong Manor has an unknown expert. His cultivation level may even be higher than yours. Let alone to say that today, your mother's safety is the top priority." Gu Liufeng's expression returned. He dipped his head in shame and a trace of guilt flitted across his eyes. He used the purple abyss vine to wrap around Gu Lufeng. It jumped off his body and noiselessly left Murong Manor and disappeared into Yanjing City streets. By this time, it had already passed Chou-Shi, and Yanjing City's eastern main streets were quiet. The only sound was the sounds of the wind blowing under the dusky lanterns on both sides, shining upon an ample space with its serene light. But it was only at this time that Zhou Yenin dared to step out of Xingde Hall's second floor. His entire person seemed like a cat on a hot tin roof, incessantly walking around in front of the door. On one hand, he was worried about young master's situation, and on the other hand, he hated himself for putting He in a difficult situation. His originally young and scholarly face was lined with wrinkles. Suddenly, Zhou Yenin heard a familiar and clear voice. "Zhou shopkeeper, until what time do you want to pace around under there?" Zhou Yenin happily raised his head up and looked towards Xingde Hall's second floor. Sure enough, he saw Heshi's half-lit-up and half-darkened beautiful appearance. But what caused him to be even more surprised was that a tall and youthful male stood beside Heshi's body. If it wasn't the young master, Gu Lufeng, then who was it? Zhou Yenin felt his blood surge and was suddenly filled with ecstasy. He nearly laughed. Fortunately, he maintained himself. With a face filled with happiness, he rushed onto the second floor. "Shi Gongzi, you really did bring young master back." Zhou Yenin rushed into the room. He couldn't help but loudly yell. His voice was choked with emotion. When he finally saw Gu Lufeng completely intact and standing in front of him, Zhou Yenin couldn't help it any longer and knelt down in front of Heshi, knocking his head against the floor multiple times. "Shi Gongzi, your too large favor and kindness. I really don't know how to repay you. If it weren't for you, Heshi's mouth twitched. Why were there so many people who liked to kneel in front of her over these past few days? If the amount of people who kowtowed in front of you really shortened one's life, she would already be close to dropping dead by now." Heshi unhappily cast a glance at Gu Lufeng. Her meaning was clear: your own person should be dealt with yourself. What she was the worst at was dealing with such emotional scenes. Single-handedly, Gu Lufeng clenched his fist against his lips, but his face shone with a long-lost smile. When he applied the spiritual power in his hand, Zhou Yenin was lightly propped up. "Okay, Yenin, Shiyu isn't an outsider. Moreover, you'll have plenty of times to kneel to him in the future." Heshi was distracted for a moment. What talk about having more time in the future to kneel to her? What nonsense was Gu Lufeng spouting? But Gu Lufeng had already switched the topic. "Yenin, first find something to bind my mother up." When Gu Liufeng's words came out, both Heshi and Zhou Yenin's faces had astonishment written across them. Previously, Zhou Yenin had been wholly focused on Gu Lufeng and Heshi. He didn't notice the disheveled woman on the bed. At this moment he let out a cry. "Young master, Shigongzi, you guys even rescued madam?" But surprise turned into surprise. Zhou Yenin looked at the time and his face showed a nervous expression. At once, he found a sturdy rope from inside the room and helped Gu Lufeng tie Gu Yulan up. Facing Heshi's doubtful expression, Gu Lufeng wiped the thin layer of sweat on his forehead and lowly said, "When my mother has an outbreak, she'll lose all sense and try to harm herself in any way possible. 1. Cho sure. Time between 1 to 3 im. 2. When he says you, he's saying it courteously." Chapter 431 Outbreak. Aside from taking Murong family's medicine or tying her up like this, I don't have any other method. Just as if it was confirming his words, Gu Lufeng didn't finish speaking before he was interrupted. The originally unconscious Gu Yulan suddenly began to violently struggle. Her strength was strong to an unimaginable degree. She was clearly completely tied up, but her entire body acted as if she was a shrimp caught on fire, incessantly fidgeting. The bed continuously creaked under her movements. At the same time, she was letting out animalistic screams. Her voice was laced with suffering and despair. Gu Lufeng foolishly stood to the side. He looked at Gu Yulan with sorrow-filled eyes. His gloomy voice seemed to come from a distant place. "Since the start of my memories, my mother has always been like this. Clearly, just a moment before, she was still carried in my tender words and eating pastries. But suddenly, she'll seem as if she's in extreme pain and falling to the floor, incessantly rolling about and shouting. At this time, my mother has lost all reason. She doesn't recognize anyone. As long as she sees Murong Feng, she'll kneel in front of him and beg for the antidote. Then, I'll helplessly look on as Murong Feng, and the rest of those Bastin Murong family beat and humiliate her as they loudly laugh. When they're finally appeased and stop beating and humiliating my mother, they finally let her eat the antidote. At that time, I was a weak coward. Apart from hiding to the side and silently shedding tears, apart from begging them to stop beating mother, I couldn't do anything else." Gu Lufeng wiped his tears away and faced Heshi, who was earnestly looking at him. the fear and desperation in his heart slowly faded away and his voice turned milder. But at that time, the frequency of my mother's outbreaks weren't high. Each time she had an outbreak, all she had to do was eat one of Murong family's pills and she would be fine for a spell. But as I grew older, my mother had more and more outbreaks. Before, it was once every 3 days. Later on it became 4 or 5 times a day. Even later on, even if mother ate the pill, the time she was clear-headed became less and less. Listening to Gu Liufeng's description, He turned her head towards the struggling, screaming, and even tearing at the bed sheets Gu Yulon. Furthermore, if you listened carefully, you could even make out in her screams, "Give me the cold food pill. Begging you to give me the cold food pill? Brute?" He suddenly lowered her voice. "Do you still have any more of the pills that Murong family gives your mother?" Gu Lufeng shook his head. "That year when I was 18 years old, I scratched up my own face and pretended that my cultivation was completely wasted. Then I secretly ran away. Originally, I wanted to bring mother with me, but mother's strange illness left me helpless. I didn't even let myself dream of that. If I brought mother away and she didn't have any more of that pill, she would feel a larger amount of pain and may not live much longer. Over these past few years, I never stopped thinking of ways to steal the pill. But even though Murong Manor is lacking in experts, its defense is extremely rigid. Moreover, up until now, I still don't know how the pill looks like. Even if I could sneak into Murong Manor, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to find it. Afterwards, Jojo hid me as a gold core stage guard in Murong family. During that time, I secretly searched everywhere in the manor, but I was never able to find the pill's whereabouts. Gu Liufeng's gaze was profound as he gazed at He. His voice was hoarse. "Shiyu now, you're my only hope. If even you can't help my mother get better, I don't want to see my mother, in such an undignified state, continue to live on in pain." Chapter 432. Able to treat. After saying the last sentence, Gu Liufeng's eyes filled with determination. But his entire being emitted an extremely sorrowful and pained feeling. Having to choose to personally kill one's own mother or watch her in pain and undignified was an extremely hard choice for anyone. He nodded her head and didn't say much more. Instead, she leaned over and felt Gu Yulan's pulse. As before, Gu Yulan was still struggling and howling, but the strength of her struggling was almost nothing to He. But this time when she checked her pulse, it lasted for an hour. Retracting the hand that was feeling her pulse, He's face didn't have the slightest amount of gentleness. Then she looked down at the open-eyed and open-mouthed Gu Lufeng. By the side, Gu Lufeng even stopped breathing as he watched He. Only until he saw her standing up, he softly asked, "What is your diagnosis, Shiyu?" He deeply sucked in a breath and swallowed the words he originally wanted to say. He didn't want to hear a conclusion that he didn't want to hear. "Shiyu, the medicine that Murong family gave me has a problem, right?" Gu Lufeng was silent for half a day before he asked, "If I was able to get that pill, would it be more helpful to treating the illness?" As long as there's a thread of hope, I'll do anything. As long as you can save my mother's life." He used the nearby water to clean her hands before saying, "You can rest relieved. Although your mother's illness is somewhat troublesome, I can still treat it." "What?" Gu Lufeng cried out in surprise, even his voice trembled a bit. What you said is true. You can cure my mother? Truly cure my mother?" He raised her eyebrow. The pleasant-to-listen-to youth's voice was filled with assertiveness. "Have you forgotten what I've said? I can't save everyone, but as long as I, Shiyu, say I can save them, even Yama can't take them away. But your mother's body has already reached this stage of being a dried-out lamp. It's very possible that she'll be unable to cultivate, and without the use of life-preserving medicines, she can only live up to the age of a normal person. It's enough." Gu Lufeng pressed his strong emotions down and with a trembling voice, he said to He, "Shiyu, I don't even know what words of gratitude to say anymore. From now on, my life, if you don't know how to say them, then don't say anything." He waved her hand at him and interrupted him. Soon, 2 silver needles quickly appeared on her wrist. The 2 silver needles slowly entered Gu Yulan's temple. Once the needles entered, Guyolan's struggling ceased. Although her body was still trembling from the pain, it became somewhat calmer. As Gu Lufeng watched the youth's act of inserting the needles, he didn't know why, but he suddenly remembered the scene of Shiyu decocting medicine in 100-herb mist with Nangong Yu handing Shiyu medicine. That high-up king of hell was willing to lower himself and show modesty in front of Shiyu. At the time, Gu Lufeng accidentally saw the emotion in Nangong Yu's gaze when he looked at Shiyu. Shiyu was attentively looking at the medicinal stove. He didn't pay Nangong Yu a glance. But at the same time, Nangong Yu's gaze never left Shiyu's body. Such a tender, pampering and dedicated gaze fooled people into believing that this wasn't the unfeeling king of hell. Rather, it was an indulging husband. Gu Lufeng sighed and quietly mumbled, "Perhaps Nangong Yu is the person most suited to you." Chapter 433 Big Question Notice. This is a double release. If you haven't read Chapter 432, make sure to do so. What did you say? Hashi was wholly immersed on Guyolan's body and didn't clearly catch Gu Liufeng's quiet mumbling. She couldn't help but turn around and ask. But why did her heart jump? Why did she think she just heard Nangong Yu's name? Don't tell her it was because she hadn't seen that fellow in so long she was beginning to hallucinate. Even if she hadn't seen him in a long time, why would she have to make such a hallucination up? It wasn't like she liked that rascal. Hashi slapped her now reddened cheeks and returned her attention to her silver needles. She didn't even hear Gu Liufeng's quiet, "It was nothing." But, thinking about it, she thought that Gu Lufeng just said some words because he was nervous about Guyolan's state. So, she couldn't help but offer some comforting words. "Don't worry, nothing's wrong with your mother. I only needed her to sleep first. If not, her continuous shouting and struggling would quickly deplete her vitality and that wouldn't be beneficial to the treatment later. And naturally, you can't use the common method for this sort of situation, otherwise, it'll also cause a bad effect on a sick person's mind." Suddenly, a smile appeared on Gu Liufeng's face. Although this smile was still somewhat bitter and weak, it already carried some traces of relief. "Little Yue, you're the genius doctor. When you decided to do something, I'll trust you. There's no need to explain something to me. If I can't even trust you, who can I trust?" Hashi laughed but didn't reply. After confirming that Gu Lufeng was calm again, she condensed a greenish-blue light that was about the size of a candle flame and entered the space between Guyolan's eyebrows. This was Hashi's first time using her wood attribute. And because she normally wasn't able to train it much, using even just little bit caused her to develop a thin layer of sweat on her forehead. But compared to the water attribute, the wood attribute was truly the source of life. It could nourish all living things and reinstate sources. When it was used to treat an illness, it could be said that it produced twice the effect with half the amount of effort. As for the water attribute, although it had comforting and treatment effects, Hashi felt that it was most useful for examining a person's illness. Each time she used her water attribute to check a pulse, she was basically able to see the person's entire body state. No hole was left unentered. The shivers from pain on her body slowly faded away, her tightly wrinkled together eyebrows loosened, and the corner of her mouth even had a shallow smile on it, as if she was an innocent child that was peacefully sleeping. Hashi felt her pulse again, and sure enough, it was much steadier than last times. In any case, her outbreak, this time, had passed. Hashi wiped the sweat off her face and turned around to look at Gu Lufeng. But she found that he was looking at her as if he was looking at a monster. "What's wrong?" Gu Lufeng was sluggish for a while before he hoarsely said, "Little Yue, the attribute you were just using, attribute?" Hashi's face carried a doubtful expression. "Wood attribute, ah? Is there any problem? Wasn't it just the wood attribute, one of the 5 elements? Why was Gu Lufeng so surprised? Gu Lufeng looked at Hashi's, "Why are you making a fuss about nothing" expression, and he stuttered, "It's a big problem. You said it was the wood attribute? If I didn't see wrongly, this wood attribute spiritual power had an extremely pure essence, right?" "Yes. Does the wood attribute spiritual power have any problem?" Hashi's face showed impatience. "Spit it out." Gu Lufeng deeply sighed, and after being quiet for a while, he finally said, "Then little Yue, Do you know or don't know that, in Miluo continent, martial artists having the wood attribute are extremely precious? Although the 5 types of attributes found on Miluo continent were metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, martial artists who had the wood attribute were extremely rare. This wasn't just speaking about the martial artists who possessed the wood attribute of the heavenly spiritual roots, but it was also speaking of the martial artists with mixed wood attributes. They were all few in number. The most common attribute to wood was the wood attribute, which is a variation. When Gu Lufeng said these words, He also realized. When she got her hands on all those cultivation methods, there were all types related to cultivating spiritual powers, but she didn't see any that were related to the wood attribute's spiritual power. Wood-attributed doctors could be said to be the precious treasure that every big sect or influential family would squabble for. And martial artists with the wood attribute would naturally have the ability to help the dying and injured. But their numbers are extremely sparse. As far as I know, in approximately 100 years, there has never been a martial artist with a pure wood attribute spiritual power that appeared on Miluo continent. Moreover, even if one had a mixed wood attribute, every major power would scramble for them. Most of all are the people from the Doctors Association. Reportedly they have a poster up all year. As long as someone reports information regarding a martial artist with the wood attribute, they'll reward a large sum of money. But once these martial artists with the wood attribute have been taken away by the Doctors Association, nobody has heard from them since. Some say that they've become elders of the Doctors Association, others say that they've already died. Listening to Gu Wei's words, He rubbed her chin and had a pondering expression on her face. Gu Lufeng looked at her uncaring appearance and promptly said, "Little Yuer, you must not let your guard down at all. If you wish to have peaceful days in the future, you absolutely cannot let your ability to use the wood attribute be leaked out. Especially since I see that your wood attribute's essence is extremely pure. It must at least be that of a dual attribute spiritual roots. This sort of wood attributed martial artist would never be let off by the Doctors Association." He faintly nodded and her eyes emitted a cold thread. Doctors Association? Rest assured, I know the appropriate behavior. If she let Gu Lufeng know that her wood attribute was actually the heavenly spiritual roots, presumably this fellow would become hopping mad. Once he confirmed that He understood the weight of what he said, Gu Lufeng asked the state of his mother's condition. He glanced at the serenely sleeping Guyulan before slowly saying, "Your mother doesn't have an illness, instead she's poisoned." Poisoned? Gu Lufeng was startled for a moment before his body emitted a burst of killing intent. Those people of Murong family really did poison mother, right? But if it was poison, why would mother's state improve after she took Murong family's medicine? He didn't speak and took a jade slip out. Using her divine knowledge, she engraved something for a moment before throwing it towards Gu Lufeng. Gu Lufeng was flabbergasted at her actions. Using his mind to delve into the slip, he quickly saw a portrait inside it. Moreover, it was the portrait of a flower. This flower's branches were thin, its leaves were in the shape of a feather and ordinary. But the flower petals were enormous and bright red. From far away it filled one's eyes with its blood-red appearance. He slowly said, "In my hometown, this flower is called a poppy. Here, you guys grow it differently. Inside the flower, there is a dark attribute spiritual power known as cold food flower. When the materials of this type of flower are used to refine pills, eating them won't cause someone to immediately die. They'll even become stimulated, floating about in desire, incomparably comfortable. Even their cultivation would momentarily have a boost. But if one excessively takes the medicine, they'll form an addiction. After becoming addicted, if they can't continue taking the pill, they'll feel even more pain than dying. Their entire person will seem to have gone insane, losing all reason." Chapter 435 Drug Addiction. Furthermore, when the person begins to take the medicine more and more, their addiction will grow stronger as well. Until finally, their entire body had been used up by the pill. In the end, they'll lose their mind and die a violent death. Gu Lufeng tightly clenched the jade slip. The the veins in the back of his hands bulged out. He was silent for a bit before hissing, "Murong family is a group of beasts. Why do they want to treat my mother like this? Why?" Heshi grimly laughed. "Since you've already said they're beasts, do they need any justification for doing despicable things?" Gu Lufeng took a deep breath and with great difficulty, he calmed himself down. He lowered his voice. "Little Yuer, you say, what do I have to do to help my mother?" Heshi replied, "Because the time your mother has been addicted has been extremely long, the problems faced when giving up the drug addiction will be much bigger than imaginable. The most important thing of getting rid of an addiction is the addicted person's willpower. Wait a bit longer and your mother will slowly become conscious again. You need to speak to her more, give her the will and courage to continue living. In this way, it's possible to overcome the pain of detoxification. If not, it's very possible for her to lose her will to live and die during the detoxification." At once, Gu Lufeng nodded his head. "You can be assured the most painful time has come. With great difficulty, we finally have hope. No matter how much more bitterness and hardship there is, I want to help her quit, so she can at least live the life of a normal person." Heshi nodded her head, then immediately pursued her eyebrows. "There's another thing that you must pay attention to. Because your mother has had this addiction for so long, the period it takes to kick it will also be extremely long. During this time, you must never allow Murong family's people to come into contact with your mother, and you absolutely cannot let her touch even a drop of Murong family's pill. If not, if the drug addiction occurs, I'm afraid even the gods will be unable to help your mother." When Gu Lufeng heard her words, he grimly laughed and darkly marked, "Little Yuer, you can be assured. If Murong family's people dare to come, I'll certainly pay them back 100-fold for all the suffering they've put my mother in over these years. So it's just right." Somewhat of a smiling expression made its way on Heshi's face. "If you capture one of Murong family's people, remember to get a few of those pills they refined and give it to me to look at. Towards the medicines of this world, I'm very interested in them. As for your mother, you don't have to be too worried. Every time her poison breaks out, I'll be there to use my wood attribute to give her vitality, so it's not as hard for her to pass the outbreak. Once the most difficult part is over, your mother will slowly be able to lead a normal life." Gu Lufeng repeatedly nodded his head when listening to Heshi. Once she finished, he profoundly looked at her and softly said, "Thank you, Shiyu." His eyes were brimming with appreciation, but it dwindled all the charming feelings. From this moment on, Gu Lufeng decided to consider Shiyu as his friend, as his brother, as someone he would follow for the rest of his life. As for those emotions that couldn't be said aloud, he would forever conceal them deep in his heart. He wouldn't let anyone find out, and he would let himself slowly forget. "You already said thank you a few times." Heshi unhappily said. A greenish-blue-colored spiritual power slowly appeared in Heshi's hand. Her eyes were full of interest. She hadn't thought that she could come across such a thing in this strange, ancient world. When Heshi felt Guyolan's pulse, this cold food pill was even more pure and addictive than the heroin in her previous life. But it was less harmful to the human body, so this was why Guyolan could take this type of drug for 20 or so years and still be alive. Chapter 436 Gift Xingda Hall to her? Perhaps she should find an opportunity to look for the person regulating the drugs. To be able to create such a frightful drug in this ancient world must require exceptional level in poisons. This piqued her interest. Over these several days, apart from cultivating and refining pills, she went to Xingda Hall to forcibly make Guyolan kick her habit. Because Guyolan's addiction was extremely deep, it would flare up 3 or 4 times a day. So in the first few days, Heshi was practically always guarding by Guyolan's side, in order to prevent her flaring up at any time. Each time Guyolan flared up, she practically didn't even recognize her own family. One time, she even bit Gu Liufeng's arm, tearing a piece of flesh off. There was another time when she took advantage of Heshi and Gu Liufeng's neglectfulness and knocked her head into the wall. In a short while, she had banged her head until it became badly bruised. At the same time, she was continuously yelling for them to let her die. The entire time, Gu Lufeng was firmly carrying her, letting her hit and tear at him. All the while, he was softly calling out, "Mother." His hand never released her. Would spiritual power could maintain Gu Yolan's vitality, but it couldn't lessen her pain, nor could it help her keep her rationality when abstaining from the drugs. Under these types of circumstances, the one who suffered the most hardship and torment was Gu Lufeng. This persisted for approximately 7 days until Gu Yolan's symptoms finally improved. The poison breakouts went from 3 or 4 times every day to 1 time a day. But what caused Gu Lufeng to be the happiest was when Gu Yulan would vaguely open her eyes to look at him, and she would grab his hand and call out, "Lufeng." The first time he heard his mother call out his name, Gu Lufeng couldn't help but let out a few scalding tears. This was the first time he heard his mother call his name out, when she was sober, over the 10 years they had been separate. At last, on the 8th day, Gu Lufeng suddenly pulled at the departing Shiyu's hand and smiled, "Little Yuer, I'll never be able to repay you for the grace you gave us, this mother and son pair. I'll completely gift Xingde Hall to you, okay?" All of a sudden, He blanked there. Gift Xingde Hall to her? This was the foundation that Gu Lufeng spent 10 years to lay down. Had this fellow gone mad? She was just about to refuse when Gu Lufeng stopped her. "First, you listen to me speak. I've already heard what your subordinate, Shi-san, has said. He frequently helps you sell medicinal ingredients and refined pills on the black market. Although business transactions are concealed on the black market, the income is greatly docked. Rather than sell them on the black market, it'd be better for you to open your own pharmacy and be the master." Gu Liufeng's words actually caused He to feel emotionally affected. Not only because of the sale of the pills she refined, the most important are the medicinal herbs in her space. Nowadays, Dan was very hardworking, but he had packed up most of the ancient rhyme spiritual field. Every day, he only took the spiritual plant, but it quickly filled the spirit firmament palace. Moreover, the time it took for spiritual plants to mature in the ancient rhyme field was short. It only took a few days for a batch to be ready for harvest. If she used them all to refine pills, she couldn't even finish using them by the time she died, and she could also forget about doing anything else. If she could have a medicinal hall that was considered her own, then she didn't have to be worried over the sale of those medicinal ingredients. An extraordinary splendor streaked through He's eyes. She was just about to open her mouth and reply when Gu Lufeng seemed as if he understood what she wanted to say and immediately said, "Little Shuer, my saying that I'll gift Xingde Hall to you isn't because I want to put you in an advantageous situation. Instead, it's because our supply of goods for Xingde Hall has been completely cut off." "What do you mean?" He thought back to the words of the little manservant from Ji Xinghall's words and couldn't help but be flabbergasted. Murong Manor has such big ability that it can completely cut off your supply of goods. Chapter 437 Hearing of the Doctors Association. Again, this can't be If Murong family was able to accomplish this, then their medicinal hall wouldn't have been suppressed by Xingde Hall earlier. Gu Lufeng didn't speak before Zhou Yenin walked over to He with his face full of worry. "It isn't only because of Murong family suppressing us. The main reason is because we offended Feng family and Feng Lianying in the secret territory. Shi Gongzi, you don't know, but Feng Lianying is a part of the Doctors Association. Furthermore, her position isn't low either. No matter what medicinal hall it is in Miluo continent, as long as the Doctors Association suppresses them, they won't be able to continue on." Zhou Yenin saw that He had a puzzled expression on his face and he sighed. Because in Miluo continent, regardless of whether the spiritual medicine is good or if it's a standard pill, it's all related to the Doctors Association. If the Doctors Association issues an order to suppress us, we can't find any places to replenish our supply, nor can we find any doctors willing to work with us. Just relying on our few fields of spiritual plants and the rate I refine pills, we cannot keep even one Xingde Hall up and running. After all, Xingde Hall had branches, there wasn't only this one store in Yanjing City. And nowadays, they didn't even have enough pills and medicinal ingredients to keep the branch in Yanjing City up. This time, He truly had a surprised expression on her face. Ever since she arrived on Mi Luo continent, she had always heard of the Doctors Association's name. She knew that this was an enormous organization. But she hadn't expected that this organization's strength was to this degree. How much power and military force was needed to be able to monopolize 80% of the mainland's market? On the contrary, at this moment, Gu Lufeng broke out into a laugh. Little Yue, do you understand my reasoning now? If I don't hand Xingde Hall to you, it won't even be 2 days before the foundation that I spent 10 years building up falls apart. Rather than so, it would be better for you to come take things over. I'm convinced that, on this Miluo continent, only you are able to contend against the Doctors' Association. When Zhou Yenin heard what was said, he was filled with great alarm. However, he wasn't shocked at the fact that Gu Lufeng wished to gift Xingde Hall to Heshi. Gu Lufeng had told him that he would gift Xingde Hall to Heshi a few days prior. Now, Zhou Yenin was very admiring of Heshi and was even moved to tears by her. Where would he have any opposing thoughts? What he was shocked against was that Gu Lufeng said that Heshi could contend against the Doctors' Association. Shi Gongzi is also an expert in refining pills. Zhou Yenin knit his brows. But, even if we Shigongzi can refine pills, by only relying on us, we would only be able to refine 100 bottles with 1 or 2 pills each inside, each day. We would be extremely far off from the amount that is needed. Heshi didn't have time to speak before Shi-san, who had followed Heshi here, suddenly rushed up. From his bosom, he brought out a piece of paper and mysteriously said, "What if our family's young, one? Our family's Gongzi can produce 300 bottles of these quality pills each day?" Zhou Yenin suspiciously took the light yellow-colored paper and took a look. As it turns out, it was an appraisal for a pill from the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution. But when Zhou Yenin clearly saw the outcome of the appraisal on the document, he was overwhelmed with shock and voiced out, This can't be. How can the world have such a superb pill?" He rubbed his eyes and took another glance. Then he shook his head and glanced again. But the appraisal was written in black and white. It was clear as day. The Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution's crest caused him to become dizzy. By the side, Shi-san mischievously laughed. He looked down and appreciated Zhou Yenin's "to hell with it" expression, although he had originally been startled as well. Looking at others being intimidated by his own family's miss was truly too pleasurable. A high sound of coughing. When he saw enough of Zhou Yenin's joke, he finally walked forward. "Don't look anymore. No matter how many times you look at it, the result will be the same. First-rate supplement spirit pill, the spiritual power of 10 crystals. The pill's essence purity is 99%. It's able to be taken long-term without limit." Such a short sentence. I saw it once and could recite it from memory. How long do you expect to look at it? Shopkeeper Zhou trembled and looked up. Holding up that piece of paper, he asked, Is this real?" Shi-san sneered. "Don't you see Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution's crest on it? That has an attachment of spiritual power on it. Don't tell me you think I can fake it. Hey, requesting you not to look like you've never seen the world are making a fuss of nothing. What do you say, if we only sell these pills in addition to various sorts of fresh spiritual medicines, will it be enough to support Xingde Hall? If there is this type of pill, of course it's possible." Zhou Yenin's expression finally returned. His hands emotionally shook. "How can this be top-quality pills? It's the best pill. If any shop has just 1 bottle of this pill, it could be considered a treasure that could suppress shops. If we can sell this pill every day, in under a year, our Xingde Hall can push down every other medicinal hall in Yanjing City. But where is this type of high-quality supplement spirit pill found, ah?" Speaking up to here, Zhou Yenin showed a yearning and dejected expression again. "I dare to say that even Doctors' Association can't find a few people that can refine this pill?" Shi-san rubbed his ears and let out an "are you a fool" expression, unhappily saying, "I say, shopkeeper Zhou, did you even hear what I just said? I already said that this pill has been refined by my family's Gongzi. Furthermore, every day she can make 300 or 400 pill bottles, and this is only the product of half a day's work." It was clear that the person, Zhou Yenin, in front of him was at gold core stage and that he was only at foundation establishment stage. But ever since he began to follow his family's Shisan always felt as if he could raise his head and straighten his chest in front of anyone when speaking. Didn't it seem that even the vice president of the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution was respectful in front of him? When the head of the black market came to ask if he could sell more pills, wasn't his tone sincere and fervent? Hey, this feeling is really too pleasurable. Ah. Oh my God. Zhou Yenin let out a cry. Filled with disbelief, he looked towards Heshi. Even his breathing had halted. You can really refine such a high-quality supplement spirit pill? Hey, you still don't trust? Shisan casted a glance at Zhou Yenin and fished a small porcelain bottle out from his bosom. Look, I still have a bottle that master refined. Give it a try and you'll know. Although most of Heshi's pills had been sold on the borderless black market, in order to guard against the unexpected and in the case that B Courtyard's people needed to use it, Shisan still had some pills left over. There wasn't enough to sell, but if it was used to give to Zhou Yenin, there was an abundant amount of them. Zhou Yenin took the pill out and sniffed it. Then he took a look and suddenly raised his head to look at Shisan with a burning gaze. Shisan had turned blank from his stare. What, is this pill fake? I remember. Zhou Yenin's voice suddenly raised. Aren't you the San Zi that caused an uproar earlier? About a month before, news suddenly came out in the medical world that high-quality pills had appeared. It caused every influential family and large sect to come looking at every medicinal hall. In particular was the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution who posted an announcement searching for a low-rank martial artist called San Zi. But, no matter how much everyone searched, there wasn't any trace of San Zi that could be found. Later on, the matter was just left unsettled. Want you, when he's saying you, he's formally saying it. It's just that this situation was rumored. As a second-rank doctor, Zhou Yenin had heard some of it. Originally, he thought that this San Zi had long already been taken away by the Doctors' Association. He didn't expect that the person who refined the pills was actually Shigongzi, and the rumored CZ was Shigongzi's butler, Shisan. However, Zhou Yenin didn't follow the black market much. So, he didn't know that Shisan had raised up such a storm in the black market with this high-quality pill, much higher of a storm than the one raised in Yanjing City. During the time that Shisan was selling the supplement spirit pills on the borderless black market, he also used the name Sanzi. And to avoid inconvenience, he gave the pills the name Nameless Supplement Spirit Pills. Later, when the supplement spirit pills became extremely popular, Shisan started running out of the goods on hand. This led to chickens flying and dogs jumping in the black market. During those days, every day, the communication space was flooded with people asking where they could buy nameless supplement spirit pills. So much so that some people even ran to the Mercenary Association to hire people, wanting to find out this San Zi's real identity. Nowadays, the mysterious master that refined the high-quality nameless supplement spirit pills had long since become widespread throughout the entire Miluo continent. When Shisan heard Zhou Yenin's words, his face was full of pride. Laughing, he replied, "You're considered clever. When I went to the Imperial Pharmaceutical Institution to get the pill appraised, I actually changed my appearance. Later, when the appraisal was done, that group of people encircled me, not letting me leave. They insisted that I say who refined the pill. Fortunately, I was clever. I pretended to be drunk and went to the toilet, then I secretly ran away. No matter how much they turned Yanjing City upside down, they couldn't find me." Zhou Yenin admiringly looked at the pill in his hand again before handing it back to Shisan. But Shisan didn't accept it. He looked at Heshi, and when he received her approval, he immediately waved his hand. "It's nothing more than one bottle of supplement spirit pills. In the future, our Shengde Hall will have so much, what's the point of giving it to me? You can just take it and eat it like candy." In a few days, when Gongzi has finished preparing the pills, our Shengde Hall can reopen for business. We should also find some staff and so on. Would it be better if we go to the side and consult now? Having received the high-quality supplement spirit pill from Shisan, Zhou Yenin was grinning from ear to ear. He didn't care at all that he, Shisan, was nothing more than at Qi refining stage. Following him, he ran over to the side to discuss Xingde Hall's reopening. In Shi San's eyes, Xingde Hall was his family's miss. The money earned was all miss. Naturally, he must properly plan. Seeing the two people laughing as they walked further away, He Shi's face also had a bit of a smiling expression on it. Standing beside her, Gu Lufeng saw her shallowly smile and suddenly started speaking. Shi Yu, do you care if another person accompanies you? Flabbergasted, He Shi turned to him. She didn't understand what he meant. Gu Liufeng's face didn't have a mask on, his peach blossom eyes were gleaming. If he didn't have that martial artist scar, he would be even prettier than the peach blossoms. Especially now that his forehead no longer had that gloominess, all that was left over was peace and purity. Shi Yu, I believe that you have the aptitude to stand at the summit of this world. You also have the strength and a temperament that's better than any other person. Nowadays I, Gu Lufeng, am all alone in this world. The only thing I have is this little bit of cultivation and wisdom. I'm barely enough to assist you. I want to bet that you, Shi Yu, will win success and recognition one day. Bet that you will one day stand at the top, accepting everyone's hopes. And I hope that during that time, I can stand behind you and look at your radiance. 1. Chickens flying and dogs jumping, chaos. Shi Yu, do you accept me, this friend, following you? Gu Liufeng's words were very serious, to the extent that He Shi momentarily didn't know how to respond. Thousands of thoughts swirled around in her heart. She thought about refusing, she thought of hesitating, and thought about asking. But towards the end, Gu Liufeng's words moved her. Gu Lufeng said, there would be a day where she would stand at the top of all martial artists. That's right, that was her goal all along. To become strong, so that nobody could suppress her anymore, restrict her. Thinking about it, why couldn't she accept Gu Lufeng following her? Why couldn't she create her own kingdom? Thinking to her, He Shi suddenly let out a brilliant smile. Underneath this smiling expression, the originally cold and elegant youth suddenly became peerless. The rays of lights were brilliantly bright, nearly causing people to be incapable of looking straight at her. Okay, Gu Lufeng. Looking straight at Gu Liufeng's eyes, she said one word at a time. Nalan He Shi, pledge that I regard you as a brother, as a close friend in this life. If there's betrayal, heaven and earth won't allow it. There will be a day where I'll bring you to the peak of the world, taking the world's magnificent scenery into our eyes. You can be assured I won't let you regret betting. Gu Lufeng repeatedly nodded his head. His eyes were blazing and clear, they were no longer hesitant and wavering. But after approximately the time it took to burn a stick of incense after He Shi left Xingde Hall, Gu Liufeng's expression finally returned. Wrong. Just then, when Shi Yu pledged, what did he say he was called? Nalan He Shi? After He Shi returned to be courtyard, she didn't tarry and immediately entered her space, beginning to refine pills. In fact, the high-quality pills she could refine weren't only limited to supplement spirit pills. But supplement spirit pills were the ones she was most familiar with refining. Just like Shi San said, she could casually refine for half a day and make approximately 300 or 400 pills. But these were just words. Refining pills was actually extremely costly in mind and spiritual power. Each time a stove of pills were refined, she would accumulate sweat from head to foot, but collapsing wasn't possible. Although this sort of spiritual weariness broadened her meridians and was good towards her cultivation, even an immortal couldn't experience this type of exhaustion day after day. If she could find a way to produce the pills in large batches, that would be good. Just like the pharmaceutical companies did in her previous life. But He Shi could only dream of such a thought. If she could really produce the pills in batches, then she didn't need to work in the second half of her life. All she would do would be waiting for the heavens to smash a crystal rock down. Just as she entered her space, she heard Dan Dan's melodious laugh. All she saw was the little fellow sitting on the swing woven by the purple vine. Dan Dan flashed back and forth, joyfully playing. The purple abyss vine was the most pampering towards this little fellow. Using its vine to build a swing for this fellow was a testament on its own. And from time to time, The vine even used its leaves to wipe the sweat off of its face. When the purple vine swept across its skin, it tickled Dan Dan, causing it to incessantly laugh out. As for the little golden dragon, nowadays it sat motionless in the spiritual spring water. The radiance of its gold scales were bright and dark. From the two's mind connection, she was able to deduct that this fellow was going to be promoted soon. What cultivation speed was this? Heshi was rendered speechless. Hadn't this fellow already ascended a rank after eating the divine dragon fruit? Why was he being promoted again after just a short month? The rank of dragons and martial artists were different. Adding on to that was that this golden dragon had formerly passed through calamity and went heavenwards. So, its currently promotion speed was quick, but this type of speed was truly too excessive. When Dan Dan saw Heshi, it brought the swing higher and higher. Then, it flew and threw itself into her arms, laughing all along. "Mother, it's time for the evening meal. Are you going to prepare delicious food for Dan Dan?" Heshi carried the heavy little fellow and poked its head, unhappily replying, "You little chowhound. All day, all you know how to do is eat as if I've starved you. You say, I stored food in the spirit firmament palace. Who was it that ate it clean?" It was long. Dan Dan covered its mouth, its eyes were randomly turning looking around. Heshi slapped it a few times on the forehead. "Not only do you steal food, you've also learned how to lie. I clearly put it in a secret place, but you rummaged through and found it, eating it all clean. Be careful, in the future you might eat so much you'll turn into a fatty. Ugly and fat, nobody will want you." Dan Dan isn't ugly or fat. When Dan Dan heard Heshi scolding it, it immediately began to sob. The other person, Tun, has clearly been working. Every day they plant many spiritual plants and even bring them back, neatly piling them up. "Woo woo woo, mother doesn't love me anymore. Mother avoids me because I'm ugly. Okay. Is it not okay for me to be wrong?" When Dan Dan started crying, Heshi immediately became flustered. She was usually grim, but when she came in front of this little fellow's face, it had her wrapped around its finger, she became soft. Heshi wiped the tears from Dan Dan's face and patiently comforted it. It was mother that was wrong. Dan Dan is obedient and very adorable. Dan Dan made the spiritual field full of plants and even brings them back. Dan Dan is the most useful. It was mother that spoke incorrectly then. Dan Dan, don't feel sad, okay? With great difficulty, Dan Dan nodded its head. Wrapping itself around Heshi's neck, it childishly said, "Then mother, you have to forever love Dan Dan? Even if you love daddy, it can't surpass Dan Dan. And in the future, the little babies can't surpass Dan Dan either, daddy? Little babies? What the hell? How many melodramatic dramas did this little fellow watch at 8? 2. Heshi lowly coughed and rubbed the antennae on its head. Then she helplessly said, "Okay, I got it. Mother will forever love you the most. Are you happy now, brat?" Dan Dan, whose antennae had been touched, had a red face. Mischievously laughing, he jumped down from Heshi's embrace and vivaciously ran back onto the purple vine's swing. Its face still had tear stains, but it's had a brilliant smiling expression, similar to sunshine. Really has the temperament of a child. If one said it was wind, then it was rain. 3. When Heshi saw Dan Dan happily playing, she didn't mind it anymore. Arriving at Spirit Firmament Hall, she took out the Zijin medicine cauldron. First, she refined 2 furnaces of supplement spirit pill. After spending approximately 2 hours, both furnaces had been completely refined and each furnace had about 100 pills. Compared to when she first refined pills, the speed was truly quicker. Perhaps it was related to the fact that she used the Zijin medicine cauldron to refine, but each of the supplement spirit pills she refined this time had the crystal power equal to 12 crystals. These pills had become a 3rd-rank supplement spirit pill. Heshi took out the overflowing cauldron pill scripture and chose 2 types of rank 2 pills to refine from it. After an hour, the rank 2 pills were taken out of the oven. There was 92 pills, their colors were all vivid and their spiritual chi was rich. Heshi was overjoyed. When she refined rank 2 pills now, she didn't have the feeling of having to toil anymore. Continuing on, Hashi refined several stoves of first-rank supplement spirit pills in one stretch. After all, her first-rate supplement spirit pills had already caused such a great fuss. If she took out rank 2 supplement spirit pills, she couldn't guarantee that it wouldn't attract the Doctors Association's longing. 1. The other person, Dan's referring to itself. 2. How many melodramatic dramas did this little fellow watch at 8? 8 o'clock is like the golden time. Around this time is typically when people have finished eating dinner and are spending time with family by watching television. Usually around this time, there are a lot of dramas on, especially melodramatic ones, through. If one said it was wind, then it was rain. She's basically saying that Dan doesn't dwell on much. Between different events there isn't much of a gap for him. Chapter 442 The most intelligent spirit pet. By the time the 5th stove of first-rank supplement spirit pills had finished, Hashi had already accumulated a body full of sweat. Her spiritual power had been completely dried up, and she was only able to continue up to now because she had used her 9th secluded spring water to replenish her spiritual power. Looking at the 10 or so porcelain bottles full of pills, Hashi felt immensely gratified, yet worried. If she had to refine pills every day, regardless of the time, for Shengdahal, how would she have any time to cultivate? Mother, do you want these black sweets? Dan made them entirely for you. Hashi turned around and saw the small fellow grasping a small case full of black pills. It was presenting it in front of her as if it were presenting a treasure. The little fellow's forehead had some sweat and its big eyes were glistening. The 2 antennae on its head swayed and the expression on his face said, "Mother, I'm obedient. Quickly come and praise me." These were pills? Hashi picked one up and tasted it, discovering that these were indeed first-rank supplement spirit pills. Moreover, no matter how strong the spiritual chi it seemed to have, it was nearly the same amount that the pills she refined had. Hashi swallowed the pill and felt the feeling of the pill dissolving for a moment. Although it couldn't achieve the crystal power of 12 crystals, it contained the power of approximately 8 crystal powers. The essence purity was also about 80%. This quality of pill was already comparable to the top first-rank supplement spirit pill on the market. It could even be said to be a rank above. Hashi looked at Dan's box, which she had no clue where it came from, with astonishment. How come she saw 1,000 pills? Dan, where did you get these pills from? Dan stuck out his small chest and mischievously laughed. Naturally it was because I refined them. Mother, I'm awesome, right? Hashi opened and closed her mouth for a while. After some time, she was finally able to force some words out. Dan, how long have you been refining these pills? How long? Dan didn't know either. Dan tilted his little head and seriously thought. Because when Dan threw the spiritual medicines into the stove, Dan also threw them in. When Mother lit the fire, Dan also lit the fire. When Mother opened the stove, Dan also did so. The result was this many pills, one stove. It was only the time it took one stove. Unexpectedly, Dan was able to refine 1,000 top-notch, first-rank supplement spirit pills from one stove. Hashi simply didn't know how to describe her current mood. When Dan saw Hashi didn't praise it and instead was expressionless, its antennae suddenly drooped down and it began to sob. Mother, was it Dan who made an error? Dan was just bored and imitated Mother refining pills. Originally, Dan was playing on the swing. But he later got bored of playing and ran to Hashi's side to watch. But Hashi was busy with refining and didn't notice the little fellow, nor did she play with it. Dan was truly bored and hated to depart from Hashi's side, so it began to refine with her. Dan had just finished speaking when Hashi carried it and repeatedly kissed its face. Our family's Dan is truly the most intelligent spirit pet in the whole world. Dan, you didn't make an error, instead you helped resolve a big problem for Mother. At first, when Dan had been kissed, it was distracted. Following that, it covered its face and laughed. Because it was both shy and happy, its entire body had a light pink color on it. Looking at it, it looked exceptionally delicious, causing one to want to swallow it. Hashi carried Dan and praised it for a moment before having some baffling questions. Dan, you know how to refine pills? And you have a stove? Dan pulled Hashi to a distant place and pointed at a gray stove. I found it from a corner. Mother threw it in the corner and nobody was using it, so I took it and used it. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.